as our ambassador to the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the details, I want to be very clear with this House that while this statement will focus on the process surrounding Peter Mandelson's vetting and appointment, at the heart of this, there is also a judgment I made that was wrong.
The name had been submitted to the King as Minister's recommendation. The Prime Minister had made an announcement that Mandelson was his nominee without caveats. The British government had sought agrément, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. The position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Yeah! Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a happy Thursday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. A packed show. May I wish all of you a very happy St. George's Day. And breaking this morning, Reform UK has unveiled plans to introduce a patriotic curriculum in schools within its first 100 days of government. Now, they're also planning on deporting up to 500,000 people in the course of the next parliament if they win power. Is it possible? Is the political will there to get that across the line? Can we afford it? Have we got the customs officials? Have we got the cops? Have we got the planes? I'll put that to Zia Youssef, Shadow Home Secretary, at 8 a.m. Don't miss it. Also, the Prime Minister could face a sleaze inquiry over the Mandelson scandal. Is the Prime Minister on borrowed time? I'll be asking the journalist at the very heart of that story, David Maddox, the political editor of the Independent newspaper, who was the first person to splash the story in September of last year that Mandy had failed vetting. He joins us shortly. And what about this, folks? More money down the drain as taxpayers hand Emmanuel Macron another £660 million to tackle the migrant crisis. But can France be trusted to help us stop the boats? And it's quite clear that the Prime Minister is on borrowed time. So my question to you is a very simple one. Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? My number is 0344 499 1000. Damien is on the phones today taking your calls. Is Big Ange, is the Ginger Growler the answer for Britain? Is that what we need? Text the word talk in your message to 87222, and you can leave us a voice note. Producer Christian loves a voice note because he's busy this morning outputting the #1 current affairs show on TV and radio. And you're busy too. You're getting the kids ready for school. You're getting ready to go to work yourself. Maybe you're applying the makeup, ironing that shirt. You may be at the tail end of an overnight shift, in which case I salute your contribution to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the British economy. Of course, this is a show that is dedicated and devoted to Alarm Clock Britain. And is it an alarm bell ringing that Angela Rayner could be our next Prime Minister? Is she the answer for Britain, as the saying goes? Let's talk. There, look at that. Perfect timing. Let's have a look at the front pages before we bring in my brilliant studio guest. Daily Express. France's astonishing payday to top £1.3 billion as Labour strikes new 3-year deal. Here's another 660 million to stop the boats, is the headline. France has scooped a new £660 million migrant payday in Labour's losing battle on small boats. What do you think about this? Will the French help us? Do they care about illegal immigration coming into the UK? I don't think so. I think they're quite happy to see these people leave our shores. Surely that is throwing good money after bad. The Times newspaper, the newspaper of record in this country, no less. France must reduce migrant crossings to earn their share of £110 million is the headline. And PM should face sleaze inquiry over Mandelson. The Sun newspaper, telecom giants stark warning, Brits facing mobile signal rationing as energy costs soar over Iran conflict. Phony war is the headline. A very sad story on the front page of the Mail newspaper. It's my life, my choice. Wendy is 56, in good health, of sound mind and loved by family and friends. But today, she will take her life at a Swiss clinic. Here, in a deeply moving interview that'll sharply divide opinion, she reveals why her heart is too broken to carry on. This poor woman lost her son, who was her only son, in a tragic accident a few years ago. She's never got over it. She's not ill, her brain works fine, but she's taking her life today. Very sad. And last but not least for now, the Daily Telegraph. Herma pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. This is a massive story, Christian, and we're going to go hard on this morning. Lord Herma pursued a notorious witch hunt against British troops despite being warned that the allegations were lies. This according to the Telegraph. An investigation by the paper can reveal that the Attorney General's leading role in the Al-Swedi scandal, which left war heroes facing false accusations of murder and torture for more than a decade, this man was very much engineering this awful lawfare against our military veterans. Lots of that to come, of course. Those are your front pages. Live in the studio, the assistant comment editor of the Daily Telegraph, Poppy Coburn. Hello, Poppy.
Good morning.
Really good to see you. Can I get your reaction to this exclusive from your paper? Lord Herma pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. What does that tell you about the nature of this administration?
Well, I suppose it tells you at least one thing that we don't expect to hear, which is that Lord Herma is not just completely ideological, because he's done these sorts of things before. He is a human rights lawyer, first and foremost, before he's actually a representative of the British state.
A pen-pushing globalist.
Yes, but what is new in this story is the fact that he was actually warned by someone else that the people who were running these lawsuits against the British state were literally just out for cash. They saw that we were an easy target, they knew that we were soft, and they were doing it for easy access to British taxpayers' money. And despite that, he doesn't care, because he's ideological, because he hates the British state and the people that live in it, he decides to go forward with it anyway. So I think it's appalling, but this is the man that Keir Starmer considers to be a close friend.
Yes, and it's the country's or the government's top lawyer.
Yes, exactly. And he was appointed over Emily Thornberry, who was the Shadow Justice Secretary many years ago. She's still very upset about it. I'm sure you can see this week with her, revenge moment in Parliament.
Definitely.
The Ollie Robbins hearing. But Lord Herma is someone who is deeply intertwined with the Prime Minister. I mean, they were both human rights lawyers. They were both people who are totally paid up to this kind of ideology. So whatever Lord Herma does, I think it goes straight to the Prime Minister.
Their focus on international law and international treaties, which most countries ignore, trumps the British national interest.
Yes.
So definitively those that lead us do not have our best interests at heart, because they are looking at the rule book and international law rather than, for example, the morale of our military.
Yeah.
Is it any wonder that SAS soldiers are resigning in their droves?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, I want there to be some rules and regulations. I want our soldiers to...
I'm cooling on those bloody rules and regulations.
Be held
No,
to some
Coburn,
standards.
I'm cooling on them.
We shouldn't talk to people.
Do you think the Taliban care much about human rights and international law?
No, but
and
we're better
ISIS?
than the Taliban. We're better than the Taliban, which is why we shouldn't talk to people. But this is fake.
I mean, don't get
this
me
is
wrong. I
not
don't think
true.
you should just like take a prisoner of war and shoot them in the head.
No.
But
And
I would say beyond that, knock yourself out.
I probably don't agree with that one, but I certainly agree that this wasn't the case. I mean, they literally say
You know, I'm being flippant and deliberately provocative, right?
Yeah,
But what I mean is that we cannot have our soldiers doing their work for fear of lawfare when they retire.
Exactly.
And with one hand tied behind their back.
Yes.
And with a government that appears to be on the side of, in many ways, these terrorists who appear to have more human rights than our own citizens.
I mean, these people
and our own soldiers.
These people were literally just shaking us down for money. They realised that they had a strong case. Even the fact that the evidence basis was incredibly shaky, and that's since been revealed. It was deliberate lies driven by an ingrained hostility to the British Army. But Lord Hammer, despite being warned about these people being chancellors, doesn't care. He goes along with it because, as you say, he wants any excuse to go after soldiers, to hound them after they've retired. Yeah, we can see this with how the Northern Ireland soldiers are being treated.
Bingo.
These are people who are, in some cases, in their 70s and 80s, and they are still being dragged through the courts despite having won appeal after appeal after appeal. It's completely wrong. And real criminals are stalking our streets, people who have actually committed crimes, and they get off without even a slap on the wrist.
Most definitely, and there isn't the focus on those who were part of the IRA during the Troubles, who were the terrorists, who didn't care about international law and their legal obligations and treaties and all the rest of it. And yeah, you know, no torture, you're not going to commit war crimes. But I think above and beyond that, it's a little bit like police officers who need agency, and so do our military. They're not going to have agency on the watch of Sir Keir Starmer and Lord Hermer.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, they should have their back, surely.
The first port of call for the government should be to support the people who risk their lives to protect this country. That's what it is. To be a soldier, you are risking your life.
Because they don't get paid that much money, do they? And they have often suffer physical and mental trauma as a result of the work that they do. Many wind up on the streets homeless.
Yeah.
Drug problems, alcohol. The aftercare isn't brilliant in the military. And then, hey, presto, here come the lawyers. I mean, welcome to hell.
No, I mean, and the thing is as well, these legal firms make money out of these cases. They profit from this as well. They profit from these cases that are being brought against the British state. I mean, I think Lord Homer is probably the worst person on the Labour front bench at the moment, which is quite a tall billing. You know, there's quite a few bad people who are currently within this Labour government, but his ideological kind of predilections are so toxic.
This enthusiasm for international law when it comes to the work of our military veterans, no one knows what goes on in the caves of Afghanistan. You know, this is not the realm of probity and international law and jurisdiction. This is fighting terrorists, people that hate the West, that hate us. These people are absolute, you know, scumbags who will do stop at nothing to kill our men and women. And what are we fighting for? Democracy, freedom, British values, the rule of law, order. And it's just quite shocking that if you look at that front page, and great journalism from your paper, Hermer pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. I mean, there's a recruitment crisis already going on in our military. We've got a hollowed out military. We've barely got a navy now. This doesn't end well, does it? Because at the heart of this is national security. Absolutely.
If you're asking people to fight for you, if you're asking them to make that sacrifice, in some cases the ultimate sacrifice, you know, this is not a joke, you die in war, you can die in war. You have to trust that your government has your back, will support you to the hilt, will give you every single legal protection that you can possibly have. What you do not want to know is that your top lawyer is more interested in representing some abstract doctrine of human rights than he is your national interest.
Poppy, you've got to help me. Where does this globalist mentality come from? How can you lead the country and be someone like Starmer who prefers Davos to Westminster? How can it happen to Hermer as well? Why aren't these people patriots? I don't understand how you can't be a patriot. I don't get it, Poppy.
Well, it's very easy for these people because they don't like democracy. I mean, they don't. They use the law to overrule what Westminster says. Okay, what the Houses of Parliament is supposed to represent the will
And
of
it's
the
why
people.
they love Brussels.
It's why they love Brussels, because it's unelected. They love unelected institutions. They love the courts. They love to basically go over our heads and say, sorry, little people, you don't understand. It's all very complicated. You can trust us to actually manage these
And of course,
problems.
we're the good people.
Yeah, well, of course, and
We
they're
are
virtuous.
virtuous.
They're
Yeah.
virtuous. Even when they're literally making money off of people who are trying to scam our armed forces, they still think that they have the moral high ground. They are very, very dangerous people.
Let's hear from Lord Hermer. In response to questions about what's just happened and the rest of it, a spokesperson for the Attorney General said Lord Hermer did a small amount of work at the start of this case, where he made clear that serious allegations at the time needed further investigation. The attorney argued it would be unfair on armed services personnel if they didn't have the opportunity to show their innocence through a proper investigation. On the civil claims, his spokesman said the Attorney General had minimal involvement in the Al Swedi claims, limited to a small number of hours between 2008 and 2013. The spokesperson added, as soon as the Solicitors Regulation Authority case was brought forward, the Attorney General was clear in his condemnation for the reprehensible behaviour of Mr Shiner that rightly led to him being disqualified and successfully prosecuted. Is there a defence that can be made of Lord Hermer, that actually we do have international law for a reason, because the world would be a far more dangerous place if we didn't? And if Britain starts to ignore international law, we become a pariah, we'll get caught up in our own court cases forever, we'll get sued as a country that we are a kind of global beacon of order and doing things properly, and that's what international law is about, and that's what Hermer and Starmer are so passionate about. Is that a fair defence?
No, I do not think this is a fair defence. The idea that anyone is looking at modern Britain and going, wow, that's a beacon, we should really follow what these people are doing, is completely ridiculous. You always hear this argument about climate as well. Look,
do you know that lovely word? Leadership. Global leadership. If that doesn't send a shiver down your spine, Poppy Coburn, I don't know what will.
It does, but look, I want standards. I want standards of public life. I want people to be held to high standards.
Meh.
That's why we have Parliament. That's why we have Parliament.
Of course we do.
All the laws we need on the books.
Parliament's sovereign, isn't it? Last time I checked.
Yeah, of course it is. Of course it is. We don't need international courts. We don't need international courts. When was the last time we invaded a country without, bothering to ask?
Well, this was this ridiculous debate around the time of Brexit, which was about food standards, and that somehow we needed the EU in order to have food standards. It's like, no, we'll leave and then we'll have food standards.
Yeah.
We'll have we'll draw them up, and they'll probably be of a higher calibre than the food standards in EU at the moment, which actually I think is the case, particularly when it comes to the humane disposal of animals, etc. There are lots of things that happen in the EU regarding food standards that are inferior to our own. So there you go. It's pretty wild, isn't it? Hermer pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. Pretty amazing. Shall we move on now, folks? It is 6:18. You're listening to Talk Breakfast, and we're going to talk about St George's Day next. Does being patriotic make you far right? Don't go anywhere.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Lovely to have your company. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. And we've got Zia Yusuf, would-be Home Secretary of this country, at 8 a.m. Don't miss that. And David Maddox, the guy at the heart of the Mandelson vetting scandal, the political editor of The Independent, joins us very shortly as well. With me live in the studio, the brilliant assistant comment editor at The Telegraph, Poppy Coburn. Let's have a look at some feedback from my brilliant viewers and listeners. Bill in Romsey. Good morning, Mark and Poppy. Happy St George's Day. If Starmer gets the boot and our Angela Rayner is leader, the bond markets will have something to say. It will not be favourable. But Ange will get a car for life, and that's what matters most. Bill, thank you for a brilliant, brilliant first text of the show. And that is our question today. Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? Peter says, Lord Hermer, why does everything seem to come back to this guy all the time? It feels he is a danger to this country. George in Leicester, good morning, Mark. Can I ask a question, please? Under what government were those soldiers sent to fight under? If it was the Tories, it's bad enough. But if it was a Labour government, this would be double trouble. George, you're absolutely right about that. Of course, I think this pertains to folk that have served in our armed forces under parties of all political colours. Roger in Wales. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, Poppy. When you ask our soldiers to fight terrorists that are animals, sometimes you have to act like an animal to protect yourself. Now, Roger, thank you for that, because that could be a very unfashionable view that you've just shared, and it could raise eyebrows at Islington dinner parties. But you're absolutely right, because these latte lefties, who are very wealthy, very middle class, the kind of people that heckle Shabana Mahmood for sensible reforms to immigration, those people haven't been to Afghanistan. They haven't been to Iraq and Iran. They've not been to the Middle East, which is a hotbed of hatred and war. And so they don't get it. They do not get it. Sean says, good morning, Mark and Poppy. How can it be described as international law if it's only us that abides by it? Just outstanding. Folks, you are so right. Poppy Coburn, assistant comment editor at The Telegraph. Happy St George's Day.
Thank you.
What about England?
What about England?
It's a great country, isn't it? Don't you think we should talk about England more?
Well, I like to talk about England because we're often left out because of the kind of nationalism of Wales and Scotland. But I also think that I love the United Kingdom, which is, you know, I think sometimes England we get short shrift, right? Because Westminster is actually within England. And so it's almost like people say they don't want to talk too much about us in case we get cocky. But yeah, you know, I love England. Of course I love England. I just think we're governed so terribly that it makes me feel depressed. I mean, I'm patriotic, but I'm also realistic, and we're in a really awful situation.
And I share your love of the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I'm a unionist to my core. The most successful political and economic union in history. And it's a beautiful thing. I don't think the Scots will ever leave. Look at the state of Scotland under the SNP.
Well, they can't do the North Sea Island anymore either, which was supposed to be the windfall that they were going to get by leaving.
Talk about shooting yourselves in the foot. There, that was the one promise of independence. We'll get the oil. Yeah. And now they've gone woke.
Got the wind farms. They've got the wind farms instead.
They do, and they're so wonderful. I mean, I think that's right. So the UK, beautiful, great project. However, is it fair to say you can love both the United Kingdom and England? Because I think that the woke progressives will say, no, it's UK. That's the politically correct term. Loving England is problematic.
Well, I hate, first of all, that term UK. I always think, call it the United Kingdom. Don't call it the UK. It's always said in like a kind of slang term, isn't it? But
give it its proper title,
Give it its proper title. Let's give it some respect, considering how much we've
Great Britain and Northern Ireland's not a bad one either.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a mouthful, but who cares?
Great. Well, there's a really great book, actually, that I was flicking through yesterday, which is Robert Tombs' History of England. That is a fantastic book. It's like about this big. It's absolutely massive. It's got 1,000 pages or more. And that tells you the history of the country from the perspective of England, English kings, English institutions, English churches and buildings. And you read that and you can't help but feel so proud of what we've done.
I mean, the UK is amazing. The United Kingdom, forgive me.
Yes.
The United Kingdom is amazing. But that small pocket of a small land, which is England, is a land of genius.
Yes.
A land of the Beatles and Shakespeare and the Industrial Revolution. Not too bad, is it? It's not shoddy.
We certainly punched above our weight. I think that's fair enough to say. I mean, and that's what's so remarkable. You know, we're told about our history that it was all dark ages for a long period of time. But even in the medieval era, you know, we were like supreme amongst Europe. We were very, very wealthy compared to our European neighbours. You know, we were very technologically advanced compared to them. So we've always been a very special country.
And of course, England by itself is still a global economic powerhouse.
Just about by the skin of its teeth. I mean, I think, unfortunately, we have lost our way. We have really lost our way in the last 30, 40 years, maybe even further back than that. But I still hope that we can go back to the place we once were.
A lot of people go to the year 1990 when we hit the slippery slope, that our national decline began. You were probably not even around during the Thatcher years?
No, I wasn't. I was born in 2000. I wasn't even in that century.
So, but obviously you've got a keen interest in political history. And if you look at the 80s, that was a time of growth, culturally, spiritually, economically. So 79, Britain was a complete economic basket case. Late 70s, flirting with bankruptcy, support of the IMF just to keep the lights on. Bodies weren't being buried, winter of discontent. We were in the toilet, the unions were running the country. Crazy inflation, crazy unemployment. It was a failed state. By 87, economic growth was at 5%. Unemployment was a thing of the past, inflation under control, an exuberant, confident country, and the special relationship in robust good health. The 80s was a time when we could win a war by ourselves. How the mighty have fallen.
Well, now we're trying to give away land instead of protecting it. I think what Thatcher did, considering that, I mean, I don't want to do under her incredible achievement, because it was an incredible achievement, but she was going after the unions and she succeeded in that. When I think of what a government has to do now to fix this country, all the different special interest groups that it has to remove, all the people who are operating within the state that don't have the British best interests at heart, I think, goodness gracious, we need about 10 Thatchers if we want to fix Britain today.
Most definitely. My view, for example, about reform, and we've got Zia Youssef on the show later, when they take over, I think the economy will be non-existent, and I think so you'll have huge national debt. The cost of servicing the debt will be enormous. At the moment, what is it, circa 100 billion a year, which is 2 government departments. That's just the interest on the debt. That may have climbed to 150 billion by the next election. So their hands will be tied. What reform probably need, if they're going to be the kind of great, you know, if they're going to save Britain, what they're going to need is a big majority and 10 years. It's a big ask, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a big ask. But, you know, I have to believe that we are moving towards a more positive situation. You know, I just don't think that the end of Britain is going to be kind of sliding slowly off a cliff. I believe that we are going to have some kind of revitalisation, but it's going to be difficult and we have to fight for it.
Yes, indeed. My goodness, she's coming in hot this morning. Poppy Coburn is taking no prisoners. Assistant comment editor at The Telegraph. Your thoughts on a variety of things. Shall we hear from the Foreign Secretary, Yvette Cooper, on the issue of flying the flag? After all, it is St George's Day. Take a listen.
We actually have Union Jack bunting on our garden shed at the moment. I've got St George's flags, I've got St George's bunting, I've got the Yorkshire Rose bunting as well. I've got Union Jack flags and tablecloths. We've got the lot. I've even actually got some Yorkshire tea bunting, which is probably taking things a bit far.
All right, we get the message. Bunting. Yeah, you can bunting off if you don't mind me saying so. Someone protests too much. How about Sir Keir Starmer on reclaiming the flag?
We should always fight for our flag. It's our flag, it's our history, our heritage, it's our values. So we should always fight for that flag. I recognise that people want to see a country that's secure in all aspects, secure borders, secure economy, and secure in terms of people's health and opportunities. That is part and parcel of what we are as a country. But there is this battle for the flag. There are some people who want to use it, cause conflict, to use it as it was used in some of the riots last year. I don't think we should give up on our flag. We should reclaim it. It belongs not to me as Prime Minister, not to the government, not to the Labour Party, not to any political party. It belongs to all of us, and we should be proud of it.
Well, that's interesting, Poppy Coburn. He was talking about the flag. It belongs to all of us. We're going to get the usual hand-wringing message about unity today from the PM. And he'll be saying it's time to reclaim the flag. Who's he saying we're reclaiming it from? He's implying that the right are somehow sowing division. I don't think so. I think it's leftist policies that create division that we're trying to fix.
Well, yeah, I completely agree with you. I mean, it wasn't that long ago that they were all freaking about people hanging St George's crosses from lampposts as if that was somehow a racist, exclusionary symbol. I mean, it's literally the flag of our country. I don't know how that could be offensive.
It can't be weaponised.
No, it
by
can't
definition.
be weaponised. It's literally the flag of our country. I mean, they're happy to wave every other flag under the sun, apparently, this Labour government. If it's a Palestine flag, then they'll wave it about until the cows come home. But the flag of our country is apparently too politically loaded for them to engage with.
Is it far right to love your country? 6:31, this is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very happy St George's Day, Mark Dolan, on Talk Breakfast. It is 6:33. And Reform UK want to have a policy where the flag of this country is flown in every school in the land. Let's talk about patriotism. Is it far right to love your country? Here's a voice note from Helen.
Morning, Helen in Knutsford again. Well, you just asked the question, does being patriotic make you far right? Well, it would seem that any kind of sensible way of thinking or loving your country makes you far right. Well, no, it doesn't at all, does it?
No, of course it doesn't. It makes you sensible. Ask the Ukrainians about national pride. If you don't have a sort of united community, a country that, has a sense of nationhood, then you're not going to do very well. You will not prevail in this ever-changing and dangerous world. Poppy Coburn from The Telegraph. UK and France strike new deal on small boats, £662 million. We've seen precious little advantage to our investment in the French hitherto. Will this make the difference?
No, of course it won't. Just like the other £500 million that we spent on the French didn't make a difference to the small boats crisis. And, you know, I understand it's tempting to kind of bash the French because they are taking our money and not doing much with it. But I will make the point, which is they don't want these people to be here anyway. And they do make the correct argument that many people are travelling through their country to come to ours because we've done nothing about the pull factors. You know, we have a massive black market economy, which we're not cracking down on. We have such generous benefits that these people are able to claim. We are a very attractive prospect.
Half of them will achieve settled status, even though none of them should, because if you enter the country in that way, you should never receive asylum.
Exactly. The truth is, you're not going to be able to fix the small boats crisis until you make it 100% clear that every single person who arrives by small boat will be denied asylum and deported immediately. That's the only way you fix it. So spend the money on that, getting a good legal team, getting deportation flights off the ground, and somewhere that you can put people that's outside of the country. Don't give it to the French. It's a complete waste of our cash.
Poppy, can I ask for your help to process something? How is it that if you enter the country illegally, you're not just accommodated at the taxpayer's expense in a hotel or now a house of multiple occupancy or an army barracks, right? How is it possible that you receive accommodation, 3 meals a day, dentist appointment, doctors, pocket money, a phone, but most crucially, liberty? How did that happen, that you can roam the streets having entered the country illegally?
Well, we can thank people like our wonderful top lawyer, Lord Hammer, for things like this. I mean, this is what the human rights doctrine actually stands for. It says that your nationality means nothing. OK, that actually you have just as many rights as the person who's rocked up yesterday. We don't know who he is, but we're going to have to give him access to housing, to healthcare, to your benefits system, to your education system if they're pretending to be a child. I mean, it's a system that's literally designed...
And then they just sort of hang out in our communities, smoking cigarettes and having a wander.
Yeah, I mean, look, maybe I'm extreme on this issue. I would say zero. Like, shut the borders completely. I would say we've had far too many people come in. Let's do as Reform UK has said, which I think was very brave. Let's get rid of the people who have come in the last couple of years under this crisis, and let's say no more. No more. It's enough. It's a complete joke. If we cannot maintain our borders, we are not a country.
And do you feel, particularly as a young person, that you have skin in the game?
Of course I do. Of course I do. I mean, it's literally the money that are coming out of my wage pocket. You know, I don't mind if money goes towards paying for pensions for people who've worked here their whole lives. I don't mind if it goes to infrastructure upgrades. I want there to be more schools. I want there to be more hospitals. What I do not want is to pay for the same people who are harassing us in the streets, who, in the case of Rhiannon Sky White, murder British people who are just trying to do their jobs. Why do I have to pay for that? Why do I have to pay for these people to be put up in prison when they do inevitably go on to commit crimes? I think it's disgusting.
As a young person, a very successful journalist, and as a woman, do you feel the consequences of unchecked mass and illegal immigration as a person as you go about your life? Do you feel that?
Absolutely, I do. You know, it wasn't that long ago that there was that awful Epping Forest case where it was an Ethiopian small boat migrant who sexually harassed a 14-year-old girl wearing a school uniform. And you know when that farce where he was released early from jail?
I know. And he wanted actually help to somehow find his plane to be deported.
I found that photos of him walking around Chelmsford town centre. Well, that's actually not far from where my family are from. I remember speaking to my mum on the phone and saying, you know, if this place that I grew up in has now got people like that just roaming around completely unchecked, being carried by CCTV cameras walking around the city, what is this country? I don't recognise this country. You know, it's the sort of thing that you would only do if you were run by mad people.
And we know, don't we, that moving migrants from hotels, which is an egregious waste of money and a big impact on communities because hotels are often a social hub packed with family and community memories. That's fine, they're wrong. But moving folk to army barracks, well, look at Crowborough in East Sussex, this army barracks, 500 undocumented men. The cadets can't do their training there now, so that's young people impacted. And the community are driving their kids to school and women are not walking home from the pub anymore.
And the worst
Brilliant. This is progress, is it?
The worst thing is the HMOs. The HMOs are the most appalling government solution to this crisis.
Arguably worse than the hotels.
I think worse than the hotels, because at least the hotels have security. With the HMOs...
And they're in one place.
It's a house that could be on your road. You have absolutely
it will be on your road.
No way of stopping this house from being used by the Home Office to put these men up. I mean, if you are like walking your kids to school in the morning, the house next to you has, 12 men living in it. You have no idea who they are. You have no idea if they have a criminal record.
The state has no idea who they are.
Yeah, you know, if I were to go and give like a talk in a school, I would have to get some kind of vetting check done, as is correct, because you need to know who people are before. But apparently if you turn up into the country illegally, we'll just take your word for it. You know, don't worry you haven't got a passport. Don't worry we don't actually know what your name is or your fingerprints. We'll just trust that you're a good person. I mean, it's disgusting.
Reform UK want, as you've said, to essentially reverse the settled status of people that enter the country illegally, circa 400,000 people. That's on top of another 600,000 people who I think came in on the Boris wave, who would lose their settled status. So it could be 1 million people that leave the country. Reform UK are hopeful that many of those people will do so voluntarily, especially if they are incentivised with £1,000. Do you think their plans are realistic, or is this Reform's tens of thousands moment?
They are totally realistic if they have the guts to follow through with it. They have to be harsh. First of all, they're going to have to leave the ECHR, they're going to have to pull out the Human Rights Convention, they are going to have to remove all legal aid for these people, and they're going to have to make it very, very firm that there is no appeals process. But it is possible to do this stuff. It is totally possible to reverse settled status. We never voted for this. Whenever there's an argument about unfairness, I never asked for this invasion of the country to happen. You didn't. No one else voted for it. We've always told politicians we want immigration to be lower.
That's what Brexit was.
Yes, exactly. They've ignored us literally for as long as I've been alive. Politicians have been promising to bring down immigration and failed. So, yeah, we do need a new approach. We do need to be tougher. It's not OK to say the 1 million people that have arrived in this country illegally, well, obviously that was unfortunate, but they're here now, so I guess we have to let them stay. No way.
No, I completely agree. I think that's, you know, really, really important that we have some common sense and that we sort this out. Some other stories I'd like to get to. Front page of the Daily Mail. Wendy is 56, in good health, of sound mind and loved by family and friends. But tomorrow she will take her life at a Swiss clinic. Here, in a deeply moving interview that'll sharply divide opinion, she reveals why her heart is too broken to carry on. The headline, "It's my life, my choice." So this is a very healthy lady in her mid-50s whose son died in tragic circumstances. The poor lad choked on a sandwich. She tried to revive him. She's got PTSD, and you can only imagine the trauma of being there when your son loses his life. She's going off to Switzerland. This raises the euthanasia question again, doesn't it? Should British people that have been through a similar trauma have the freedom to do that here?
I'm relatively open-minded in some of the arguments people make about assisted dying. You know, I think if someone has got a terminal illness and they're in agonising pain, I completely understand why they would want to have assisted dying. I'm sympathetic towards that. But for things that are related to mental health and trauma, I'm very, very frightened at where that could lead us, if I'm completely honest with you, because there are cases, you can look at countries that have legalised assisted dying, you know, in the Netherlands, in Oregon, in the US, and there are some really unpleasant cases where it's, you know, young people who have been suffering from depression who are able to assisted dying, and that I'm not comfortable with at all. I think that's wrong.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. We know Starmer is in trouble, and I have it on good authority that many people in the Labour Party think that Angela Rayner is our likely next Prime Minister. So my question to you this morning is a simple one. Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? That's next.
position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords, he was a Privy Councillor. The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very firm in person. But that was a live debate at the point of announcement, and I think it's important to make that clear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Zia Youssef, Shadow Home Secretary, live at 8. Plus David Maddox, the political journalist at the heart of the Mandelson vetting scandal, joins me shortly. Front page of The Telegraph, it's over. Cabinet turns on Starmer over Mandelson scandal. Is Sir Keir on borrowed time? Here's a voice note from Liam.
Liam from Kent, out in the lorry since 3 o'clock this morning. Happy St George's Day. I've got my flag up in the truck. Always have my poppy on the front of the lorry as well as a show of respect. Let's hope in the next couple of weeks Keir Starmer does us all a favour and does one. Let's hope for the best day, Mark. Have a great show. See you later.
Nice one. Thank you, Liam. We've got our Poppy in the studio, Poppy Coburn, who is from The Telegraph. Poppy, it's over. Cabinet turns on Starmer over Mandelson's scandal. They're fed up of defending their boss, aren't they?
They are. I mean, there's this very, very funny interview of John Healey where you can just see the man, he looks like he's sucking on a lemon. You know, increasingly he's been questioned about going through the intricacies of who said what in this Ollie Robbins, Keir Starmer bust-up. You could just see the moment where he goes, you know what? I've had enough. I'm not defending this man anymore. It was the same with Ed Miliband a couple of days ago as well.
Right.
He's completely fed up. He doesn't want to defend the Prime Minister. Emily Thornberry was basically gushing with excitement at her opportunity to kind of give Starmer a kicking. So I think it's over. You know, I used to say that he's going to stick around until conference season towards the end of the year. I don't even know if he's going to get through the end of May.
What seems to have changed in regard to the Mandelson scandal is that he's lost his cabinet.
Totally.
That he's lost a dressing room.
Yeah.
Before that, the Parliamentary Party were freaking out, but his team were behind him.
They've lost faith in him. They've completely lost faith in him.
Because he started throwing good people under the bus.
Yeah. Well, which
like
is the
Ollie
one
Robbins.
thing he said that he would not do, that he stood up there in the dispatch box and accused Boris Johnson of doing the same thing, you know, 3-4 years ago, and then suddenly Keir Starmer does the exact same thing. I think you can see it in his eyes. He's not going to be around for much longer.
Can you think of... I know we had Liz Truss in 44 days, but I think that she tried to do the right thing for the country and the economy, but the execution was poor. But I think that ultimately, I mean, I would take Liz Truss all day long over Keir Starmer. Can you remember or think of a politician less suited to high office than Sir Keir Starmer?
He truly is unbelievably bad, isn't he? I mean, this is someone who was supposed to be very successful in his previous career, but it's like he can't talk to normal people. He can't have a normal conversation with someone. He can't empathise with them. He can't tell the truth, apparently. He can't get his story straight. And when he stands up there and addresses the nation, you just feel that your brain is shutting off. My eyes are, like, closing. I'm like, he's so boring. He's like the least inspiring politician that I can think of.
But also, he gets described as managerial. Well, I don't think he's
not
even
managing.
that.
He's not managerial. Keir Starmer is not a technocrat. Okay, he is not some like genius who's like kind of tweaky at the margins.
Maybe I could offer you Rishi Sunak as somebody that loved the spreadsheets.
Yes, exactly. He is not.
Which has its value.
He is not Rishi Sunak by any stretch of the imagination. By all accounts, he apparently doesn't actually like doing the hard work of the job. He turns his phone off at the weekends. He's not actually reachable by any of his allies who need to make important decisions as cabinet secretaries. I mean, I think that Keir Starmer must know at the back of his mind that this isn't working. He must see the licks on his cabinet's faces and go, I can't stay here for much longer. But the question is, who is going to be the one that pulls the trigger? Who is going to be the person that triggers a leadership contest? Because at the moment, you can see it on people's faces that they're not willing to offend him, but not being willing to defend someone is not the same as attacking.
How long has Big Ange got to wait before HMRC rule on her stamp duty? Do we know? How can it take so long?
I have a funny feeling that it won't be her. I think she's got too much scandal around her. I think she may go for it, she may try, but I have a funny feeling that Angela is not going to end up being our Prime Minister. I could be wrong, but I'm sceptical.
I think I know why the HMRC ruling is taking so long, right? She's still on hold on the helpline. Okay. And she's like, oh, what's going on with my stamp duty? And she's hearing this message, which is your call is very important to us. Choose your kind of music. Do you want classical? Do you want rock? I wonder about that because, of course, you're speaking from a point of view of common sense and judgment regarding Angela Rayner, who has had sleaze follow her for most of her political career, including the mystery about what her main address was in the 2010s, which people have forgotten about. There were the freebies as well, the AirPods, all of that stuff. Her remarks about her opponents being scum. This woman has got more baggage than the carousel of Terminal 5. But, and here comes the but, the party faithful like her. They consider her to be a standard bearer for socialism. More so, I would argue, even than Miliband. The unions like her. So do you not think with that backing, because the electorate is not you and I.
No.
And it's not our audience. It is the grassroots of the Labour Party who are very left-wing.
Yeah.
And then those backbenchers who won't even tolerate modest reductions in the welfare budget. So these folk are massive lefties and they love Ange.
I'd also point out that her scandal and her, removal from a cabinet position weirdly might end up helping her. Because she won't be
anti-establishment figure.
She won't be implicated in all of the terrible decisions that Keir Starmer's been making. She can present herself as someone who is in opposition to Keir Starmer, whereas someone like Ed Miliband, because he's been in the cabinet the entire time, it's a little bit more
towing
difficult.
the line. She's the maverick. She's the disruptor, and I think there's a Trumpian quality about her. If not that she's Labour's Boris type figure. She's a household name politician. By the way, let me be very clear. This is not me bigging up Big Ange, because I think that she would actually be worse than Starmer, which is going some.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Because she would shift the policy platform leftwards.
Starmer's doing nothing at all, whereas, Angela Rayner, I think, would actually be making actively bad policy.
Well, that's right. I mean, she's the face of the war on enterprise with the workers' rights package, which is well-intentioned and catastrophically consequential. But what she does have, don't you think, is she's a household name politician. She has cut through. She is a headline-making machine. She's fearless. She's got an enviable backstory.
Well.
She's a woman. And, of course, Labour are desperate to finally have a female leader. So I just wonder, I hear your logic. I think that with their heads they wouldn't go for Big Ange, but with their hearts they might.
I think that's a very good point. When I think of the three frontrunners, in my opinion, it's Ed Miliband, Angela Rayner, and, don't count them out, Andy Burnham. Andy Burnham is the one that everyone within Labour is currently talking about. They want him to be the person that's made to be leader. It's a little bit difficult, though, because he doesn't actually have a seat in Parliament. And I can't imagine there's any seat in the country where if there was a by-election that Labour would actually win. That would be pretty humiliating.
He'd have to be, exactly. He can't be parachuted in. There's no safe seat. The only place, it would need to be Greater Manchester, wouldn't it?
Yes, exactly. I mean, there's basically only about 2 seats in the country that I think you would have a really decent chance of winning. And even that's not guaranteed. I can imagine people kind of rallying together to really humiliate the Labour Party. I still think that Ed Miliband is in for a very good shot. He is really beloved of the membership, but he's been tried before. He's been here before. He has been the leader of the Labour Party and lost. Angela Rayner has not been tried. She is a kind of clean slate for these people, and I think that will make her more attractive. But she's got a lot of baggage. I just don't know if they're going to be able to kind of ignore that problem.
What do you think, folks? Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? What does it tell us about the talent within the governing party of this country that the front runners are a failed ex-leader and Angela Tories a scum Rayner?
Well, it's not exactly like we're spoiled for choice, is it? I thought that Keir Starmer was as worse as it gets, but you're completely correct. It will be much worse if we get someone who actually is more ideologically to the left. If you think your taxes are high now, just you wait to what it would be like under Ed Miliband or Angela Rayner or Andy Burnham.
Do you see any kind of deal? Because, I mean, just a word on Burnham. Is it just me, Poppy, or is this man not a charlatan? because he was one of the protégés of New Labour.
Yeah.
And absolutely the kind of most centrist of centrist dads within the Labour project. Now suddenly he's like ultra left wing. I don't buy it.
No, he's completely a political chameleon. You know, he will change his opinions at the drop of a hat if he thinks it will make him more
he's
popular.
just another one that wants to be Prime Minister. I'm tired of people that want to be Prime Minister.
Because they're not very good at it. I wouldn't mind if people wanted to be Prime Minister and they had a pretty good job of doing it, but they're clearly not. Yeah, I think Andy Burnham would be a complete disaster for the country, if I'm honest with you.
I've had an idea. There needs to be a Prime Minister's school. Okay? What we should do, invest. Maybe we can repurpose, you know, some old stately home, and they go in and they learn how to be Prime Minister and how to lead and be honest with the public and have good policies.
Well,
but
at least
I won't hold my breath.
one thing you could teach them is basic, you know, multiplication, addition and subtraction, because clearly they can't do that at the moment.
We've got Zia Youssef in just over an hour's time. He's talking about this, you know, very, very ambitious plan to effectively deport or encourage the departure of 400,000 people who have received asylum, who achieved so by entering the country illegally. He wants to undo the damage of the Boris wave, which is a massive fiscal time bomb for the country, which even Shabana Mahmood has woken up to. What do you think I should be asking him when he's live at 8?
Well, I think go through the actual practical constraints on doing this stuff, right? Because it's very easy to make a statement. We've certainly had no shortage of politicians making statements about what they'll do on immigration. But you should really ask him, like, what treaties are you going to leave? You know, how are you going to get past the courts in this country? Because don't forget, there's plenty of lefty lawyers who are living in the UK. How are you going to get this through Parliament? Like, do you actually think you're going to get this through the House of Lords as well? I think those practical questions need to be asked. We actually do need to ask our politicians to have a credible plan.
Most definitely, and I also think that reform may be chastened by how the ICE raids have played out in the United States. And, I mean, I think it's the right policy. Trump was very clear that he would deport illegal immigrants, and the ICE raids actually focused primarily on criminals who were illegal immigrants.
Like
we're talking
rapists, drug dealers.
Correct. And it's amazing how the latte lefties were on the streets protesting these ICE raids, which shows that they have no moral compass. They're not the good people. However, it backfired politically. The optics of it were disastrous, and even moderates in America and even some, you know, Republican voters were turned off by the ICE raids. So, you know, they'll be mindful that that can't happen here.
And I think that can come down to them planning properly. You just need to have proper planning in place. You need to have some kind of idea about how you're actually going to manage the situation.
Quick one for you, only a few seconds. Do the right need to man up a bit and woman up a bit when it comes to the war in Iran? This is a wicked regime which is being disarmed.
You're speaking to totally the wrong person. I think the war was a complete disaster.
Really?
I think, you know what, like, I like Donald Trump. I've supported Donald Trump for quite a long time. I've defended him against lefties in this country, but this is a complete disaster, and it's a disaster for Britain. Why?
I mean, obviously it's a short-term disaster, no pain, no gain, but what you're talking about here is, you know, a country with no Navy, no Air Force, and they're going to have to come to the negotiating table because, yes, we're all suffering as a result of the blockade
They
of
have
Hormuz.
3 months of
Not
oil.
as much as
they
them.
have 3 months of oil reserves. They're still exporting oil to China because the US can't stop Chinese ships. They can hold out for a very, very long time, and we will all suffer for this. If you're going to topple the Iranian regime, you topple it, but they're not going to topple the Iranian regime. In fact, they're coming out of this stronger than they were before.
My thanks to Poppy Coburn from the Telegraph newspaper. Poppy, look forward to seeing you again soon. Really enjoyed our conversation this morning. So much to get through. Can the French be trusted to help us stop the boats? Is it worth $500 million more? Throwing good money after bad? St George's Day. Is it far right to love your country? And what about our next Prime Minister? Is Big Angela Rayner the answer for this country? This is Talk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to provide the House with information that I now have about the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the details, I want to be very clear with this House that while this statement will focus on the process surrounding Peter Mandelson's vetting and appointment, at the heart of this, there is also a judgment I made that was wrong.
The name had been submitted to the King as Minister's recommendation. The Prime Minister had made an announcement that Mandelson was his nominee without caveats. The British government had sought agreement, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. The position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Yeah! Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, it is 2 minutes past 7. Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast, in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle. May I wish each and every one of you in England a very happy St. George's Day. What a great celebration. What a wonderful country England is. I shall be celebrating with a nice pint of real ale later. It is my patriotic duty. But our question to you this morning is a simple one. Is it far right to love your country? Will you be celebrating St. George's Day, or do you worry that you'll be cancelled for that? The Scots are allowed to celebrate, aren't they? And the Welsh, why can't the English? Also breaking this morning, taxpayers hand Emmanuel Macron another £660 million to tackle the migrant crossings in the Channel. But can France be trusted to help us stop the boats? Is this the throwing of good money after bad? Cabinet loyalists turn against Starmer over the Mandelson vetting scandal. How long has the PM got? Live on the show at 8 a.m, Zia Youssef, our would-be Home Secretary, wants to deport 400,000 people. Is it practical? Can it be done? He's live on the show at 8. Don't miss it. Plus, the political editor of the independent newspaper, the man at the heart of the Mandelson-Starmer scandal, David Maddox, live on the show. Is Starmer through the worst of it when it comes to this scandal? No, says David Maddox. Find out why shortly. So much to get through. Let me take you through the front pages briefly, if I can. The Times newspaper, PM should face sleaze inquiry over Mandelson, and France must reduce migrant crossings to earn share of £110 million. Daily Express, France's astonishing payday to top £1.3 billion as Labour strikes new 3-year deal. The headline, here's another £660 million to stop the boats. The Sun newspaper, telecom giants stark warning. Brits facing mobile signal rationing as energy costs soar over Iran conflict. Phony war is the headline. And what about this in the Telegraph? Hermer pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. This is the Attorney General, Lord Hermer, who's more focused on international law than the British national interest. I cannot believe that I live in a country where brave military veterans are being prosecuted for serving this country and for putting their lives on the line. This is the government's top lawyer who's quite happy to wage lawfare against our military heroes. It is disgusting, it is sick, and it is wrong. We will bring further reaction. In fact, reacting to the big stories of the day, a very good friend of mine, live down the line from his world office, James Price, former government special advisor. Good morning, James.
Hello, my friend. Happy St. George's Day. We can cry God for Harry, England and St. George together.
Most definitely. And can we begin this conversation by saying that England is a magnificent country?
Absolutely right. And next year, of course, although this year our lovely sweet cousins across the pond get to celebrate 250 years, bless them. Next year, England will be celebrating its 1100th birthday, so we can show them how it's really done.
Can you think of a small land on a small island that has punched above its weight more than England through history?
Absolutely not. I think it's a wonderful thing for us to get back into all of our great English history. I mean, a lot of World War II comparisons that come along, mostly I think because the left like to try and call people Nazis because they don't know any other history. But we've done so much all the way through that history. Look back to what Alfred managed to do, and then his grandson Athelstan, of uniting all the various parts of this country into England for the first time, and go through the sort of storied history of great kings and leaders of England, read what Pitt managed to do. I think maybe my favourite would be Edward III, who almost reconquered a load of France and would definitely not have allowed any of the boat crossings I suspect we're about to talk about. Or maybe Henry II, although he did sort of speak a bit of French, so maybe we'll call that one a draw.
Most definitely. I love England. God bless the land of Churchill, Shakespeare and the Beatles. And, you know, I mean, I took my university education in Scotland at the University of Edinburgh. Scotland is a remarkable, magnificent country. Northern Ireland, a magnificent, wonderful country. Wales, stunning. The people, the culture, the history. But we need to celebrate England too, don't we? And we don't want to be labelled far right in doing so.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that we should be comfortable with those sorts of overlapping identities. That's some of the genius of Britain. I think I worked this out recently. I'm 1/16th Scottish, something like that. And I'm about 2/4 Welsh, because both my grandfathers were Welsh. So I'm sort of playing with the math a little bit there. Doesn't make me feel any less English as well as being British. And I know that some people, I think the Americans often use the words interchangeably, but the history again of these islands is that sort of interplay between all of it. And once you get to the Act of Union in 1707 between England and Scotland, we really start to hum and motoring as top nation around the world. We gave the world the modern world with the great inventions that people of this island did. And I think the kind of creative fizzing tension between the constituent nations of these islands is what did an awful lot of that. You know, you'll know from studying up in Scotland that it's a sort of mostly playful, jocular banter between the two sides. And I think really because everyone knows that England is top dog. I've upset a load of people there. But just briefly, you remember that great Six Nations advert once upon a time? And it's teams, it's supporters of teams of all different colours. You've got the Italians, the French, the Welsh, the Scots, and they're all saying England, England, England. And then the end of it says, it's not about who you want to win, it's about who you want to lose. And it's great to live rent-free in everyone's heads like that.
Well, most definitely. And I'm just very much interested in your genetic makeup, because although you're predominantly an Englishman, you have Welsh and Scottish blood, which also tells me, therefore, you can carry a tune and hold a drink.
Just not at the same time is the only problem.
Well, would you be willing to do both of those things live on Talk Breakfast?
Maybe give me tomorrow morning. I'll drink all the way through the night to be ready for it.
There you go. I want you to get practicing a Tom Jones classic, maybe Delilah or the Green Green Grass. So many stories to get through. Taxpayers hand France another £660 million to tackle illegal immigration. The problem we have, James, is the French don't care about the boats, do they?
No, well, they care about them in the sense they find them very useful to get these people off their own land. I think we all have to go back to the classic phrase that all economists will know: you show me the incentives and I will show you the outcomes. The silly rosbiffs, as they call us, will be very happy. We'll continue giving them loads of money. The French will continue taking it and making a kind of very Gallic, shrugged, half-assed effort to get some of these people away. But fundamentally, they're very happy to see these people they've stupidly let into their country or some of their other borders leave their shores. Why would they want to try and keep them and have to process them and all of the rest of it? It's not massively in their interests until we find some ways to make it in their interests, or we address some of the more fundamental root causes ourselves of the fact that England is seen as such a soft touch. We put these people up in much fancier hotels than the French will do, and we don't have the right kind of deterrence like the Rwanda scheme, or frankly, as Dominic Cummings has said, using special forces to take out some of the people who run the gangs who do these things. Until and unless you address those root causes, we're just going to continue sending on all this money to the French to not see nearly enough progress happen. It's not addressing the problem at root source.
Most definitely. Well, I'm furious about Paris's lack of action when it comes to illegal immigration. However, James, is the truth that whatever the administration, Reform, Conservative, Labour, we cannot stop the boats without the help of the French?
I'm not sure that's entirely right, but I do think it would certainly help to have them actually be on side and to have our incentives aligned. If, for example, I mentioned, if you could do a deal with the French to go after the people that actually run these gangs and run joint special forces operations, that would be, I think, probably pretty easy to do. Actually, that's what Dominic Cummings has said. He got, when he was in government, all the sort of top people from those special forces together to work it out. But, if you address the root causes, I say, the deterrence, you don't need them on it. But I think that there's a lot of politics involved as well. There's a French presidential election coming up next year, and it's looking highly possible, I won't say probable, highly possible, that it will be either Marine Le Pen or more likely her deputy Jordan Bardella, as Le Pen is probably going to be barred from running by a court, who will take power there. Jordan Bardella was in Britain earlier this year, end of last year, met with Nigel Farage, and they know each other now. And if you can get a good working relationship there, where they are, united on the need to get these sorts of people out of our countries, plural, that obviously makes things a lot easier. That would be very, very useful. Of course, the only other root cause we could do would be, as Edward III I mentioned earlier on, just to take back France, and then we could administer it the way that God always intended. That would be a lot easier.
Well, we can but hope. Front page of the Daily Telegraph, James. Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, the government's top lawyer, pursued a notorious witch hunt against British troops despite being warned that the allegations were lies. This is an exclusive investigation on the part of the Telegraph. They reveal that the Attorney General's leading role in the Al-Swedi scandal, which left war heroes facing false accusations of murder and torture for more than a decade. The likes of Hermer and the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, seem to be more focused on international law than the British national interest.
Absolutely right. I mean, look, I just mentioned in the previous answer how useful our wonderful special forces are at keeping us safe. They do those sorts of operations all around the world. We'll never know most of their names. We'll never know most of those operations, but they are very impressive, very dedicated, patriotic people who put their lives on the line, and they put their lives on hold to travel around the world and do things the rest of us could not do in order to keep us safe. And what we should therefore do is afford them absolutely every protection, every thanks, every bit of kit we can to make their jobs easier to do what they and only they can do for us. Instead, we have a Prime Minister and his disgusting, I will go so far as to say, disgusting little friend who shames the Office of Attorney General, who shames the House of Lords, and who shames the whole country for doing this. I'm not sure he's ever met an enemy of Britain that he doesn't like and doesn't seem to want to support. And all this cab rank rule stuff about his past is complete nonsense. The man has chosen many of these cases. It is absolutely disgraceful. And even if you thought, oh, maybe there's something in some of these, we're now seeing these people, these brave warriors of our country, quitting en masse because they know that the government doesn't back them. And one day when they're old and retired, they'll get a knock on the door telling them off and arresting them. Absolutely disgraceful. And the sooner this little rodent leaves office, along with his mate, the Prime Minister, the better as far as I'm concerned.
Lawfare against our veterans in their retirement is cruel, unjustified, wrong and unfair. It's also terrible news for national security because there is no incentive to join the armed forces.
Absolutely right. I think there was a poll out yesterday, wasn't there, about how few young people say they would actually be willing to fight for the country?
Less than half. We've also got SAS soldiers who are quitting because of fear of future prosecution. This doesn't end well, James.
No, absolutely not. I mean, I let people Google the name Phil Shiner to see what happens in some of the legal world. One of my best friends was very useful in going after Phil Shiner. I'm very proud of him for doing so. But there you've got a bunch of people in this country who either are just craven, money hungry and see this as a very cynical way to make money off of some of our best and brightest, or who are so ideologically corrupt and anti-British that they want to go after the very best of us. And I'm sure that all people, decent people watching and listening to this, will be able to understand, as you say, Matt, the second order consequences. What happens when you don't have any of these people to keep us safe in our beds at night? What happens to the rest of us? I'll let you ask that question.
Well, it's a real worry, isn't it? Let's take a voice note on this story. The government's top lawyer conducting lawfare against veterans. This is Sean.
Morning, Mark. Sean from Grimsby. My second favourite person in the world, Lord Hermer, decides to prosecute soldiers, even though he's been told they ain't done anything wrong, yet he does it anyway. So you have to ask yourself why. And it's because the vast majority of former soldiers and soldiers like myself who join the Army or Navy or Air Force or whatever tend to love the country. And that's a big no-no in leftist Labour circles. And while the Prime Minister stands there and spouts off, oh, we need to love our flag, let me tell you one thing, mate, right? To former soldiers like myself, the colours are everything. Everything. You lose the colours, the battle's over. And at the same time, we have to get on a war footing and go to war for these muppets. I mean, come on, it's an absolute joke, ain't it, mate? Anyway, Mark, great show. Got to get back to work. Got to chip in towards Rachel Reeves' painting she had done of herself. See you later, mate.
Well, thank you, Sean. May I thank you for your service to this country. And there you are, a hero again, getting back to work. Alarm Clock Britain putting in more than you take out. Of course, on your screens now, if you're watching on YouTube, we have a response from the Attorney General. Very clear that this was a very small number of hours that the Attorney General committed to this particular story, and will obviously earlier in the show we read out his full statement defending his actions. James, in the end, the world is an increasingly dangerous place, and what we need to do is make sure that those who serve in our military are not doing so with one hand tied behind their back or in fear of future prosecution. We've got to give them equipment, pay them properly, and let them do the job.
Absolutely right. But it's the kind of tough, scary people like that who put their lives on the line for all of us so that little cowardly weasels like Richard Hermer can scuttle around betraying them is absolute disgrace, as you say. And I think that we should do a lot more in general to make sure that our armed forces, especially those sorts of special forces, are kitted out with everything they could possibly have to do the job better. We need to spend a hell of a lot more money on defence, but we also need to spend it in a much smarter way, because there are procurement issues there. We also need to have a broader, more holistic take on national security, our infrastructure, our culture, our ways of life. There are plenty of people that we've let inside this country who hate it, not just the kind of white middle class types like this. There's that Orwell line, isn't there, that some of the English middle classes would rather be caught with their hands stealing from the church collection plate than stand up during the playing of the national anthem. And I think that's a real problem that we've got at a kind of deeper cultural level. And that voice note just put it so perfectly, that someone who's actually served the country in the armed forces now is getting up early and going back to work again, and it's fantastic. That's what we need. And Mark, can I just say how good it is that you thanked him for his service? Regular listeners of yours will know my wife is an American, and in America they're so good at doing that, thanking veterans when they see them, making sure they will not buy a beer in a bar or something. And I think we should do a lot more of that in Britain as well, to show our gratitude for some of the best of us.
Most definitely. My gratitude to you, James. Very much enjoyed our conversation. James Price, former government special advisor. Happy St George's Day. Is it far right to be patriotic and to love your country on St George's Day? Enid says, good morning, Mark. Happy St George's Day. Peter says, what do people mean by far right? Anything that's not extreme left these days. Ordinary people being labelled far right just for wanting our country and way of life not to be taken away. Michael in Birchington in Kent. Good morning, Mark. How can it be right for a soldier who has to make a decision in milliseconds to be prosecuted by a team sat round a table with tea and biscuits with all day to decide if the decision was right or wrong? You're so right about that, Michael. These people, these lefty lawyers, the latte lefties, Christian, they've never been to the caves of Afghanistan. Mark, on St George's Day, this is Sarah near Plymouth. The government and the MOD may do well to start encouraging patriotism. They never know when it will come in handy. Well, I totally agree with you, because if you do think it's far right to love your country and to be patriotic, look at Ukraine. Where would they be without national pride as they face down Putin's Russia? Lots more to come. Folks, what do we think about this? St George's Day, Angela Rayner, is she the answer for Britain? Plus, what about this, the Iran war? Will it ever end? I'll be asking a former top government minister next.
The handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk. It's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, Mark Dolan in for Jeremy Kyle. A very busy show this morning. Zia Youssef, would-be Home Secretary under a reform government, is live at 8 a.m. He wants to deport upwards of 400,000 people in the course of the next parliament if they win. Is that doable? Can it be done? But front page of the Daily Telegraph, Herma pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. This is the top government lawyer, the Attorney General, who's been linked to lawfare against our veterans, despite warnings against pursuing such cases. Here's a voice note on that from Damon.
Good morning, Mike. Damon from Wigan. I wait every day for the door to go and to be prosecuted for orders I followed during my time in the armed forces. I just think it's ridiculous. You give all those years in the armed forces and do the best you can for your country, and now I sit there waiting for the door to go, and I wonder every day, will I go to jail? Will I be prosecuted? It's a living nightmare. Thank you, Mike.
Damon, thank you for your candour and a very, very well articulated voice note. And thank you for your service to this country. We have so many veterans. We have many serving military personnel who watch and listen to the show, and many veterans as well. And they should be taken care of. They should be elevated in our society in the way that they are in countries like the United States. What they shouldn't be going through is to be subjected to lawfare. Let's get a reaction to all of the big stories of the day, including that one and what's happening in the Middle East, in the company of a good friend of the show, Sir Robert Buckland KC, former Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary. Good morning, Robert.
Good morning, Mark.
What are your latest thoughts on the war in Iran? The Strait of Hormuz cannot be opened at the moment due to ceasefire breaches, is the latest line. Do you think this war in Iran was a mistake?
Look, I think that what started as, frankly, an incredibly brilliant Israeli intelligence effort to take out the most senior leadership in Iran, a murderous regime, let's not forget.
Yes.
Killed 35,000 of their own people over this year, and the numbers keep on going up. Another execution this morning, for example, has turned from a remarkable intelligence operation and a strike into a rather inconclusive and confused picture, because I'm afraid the US administration doesn't seem to have a plan, doesn't seem to know what its objectives are going to be. The war started as a basis of regime change. Now it's all about the uranium supply and the capability of Iran to develop a nuclear weapon. A very important issue that we all should be concerned with, but I don't see a coherent plan. And what I see in Washington is now a lot of division. Pete Hegseth, who's the Secretary for Defense, or the War Secretary as he calls himself, has just presided over the sackings of lots of senior military personnel. The Secretary of the Navy's gone overnight. There's real concern in the corridors of Washington as to what the president's plan is. His base, the MAGA base in the Republican Party, is not happy with this war. And it seems that the president is, flailing about from one tweet to the next. And this is leading to great confusion on the ground. And I'm afraid it just helps that regime in Iran consolidate its position and be ever more intransigent about that vital Strait of Hormuz that is a stranglehold on not just oil and gas, but the world economy more generally. So this is a problem that doesn't seem to be going away, and there doesn't seem to be any clear answer as to how it is to be resolved.
Can the situation be salvaged? Can a deal be achieved that sees a weakened Iran incapable of producing nuclear weapons?
Well, I think it's a laudable objective. I think that the attempts were made in the Obama administration. That treaty was jumped by Trump. You're dealing with a regime now that is very, very wounded. It's unclear precisely who's in charge. We know that the Revolutionary Guard, that organization that helped propel the Ayatollahs to power and has been the base of that power for 40 to 50 years, is very much in control. It has vested interests in Iran. It's a deeply corrupt oligarchy. Which really has its own financial interest to stay in power. I'm not optimistic about the reliability of getting a deal from Iran at the moment and their ability to stick to it. You know, I'm deeply sceptical and mistrustful of the regime, but at the same time, I think, you know, the US has to be very, very clear that now really its aim should be to get the Straits of Hormuz back to normal so that we can get the economy of the world flowing again properly. You know, this is hitting all of us. It's hitting some of the poorest nations the worst, but it's hitting us too. And I do think that that should be the priority now.
Sir Robert, the government's top lawyer, Lord Hermer, the Attorney General, stands accused of pursuing a witch hunt against troops despite warnings. Your reaction?
Well, I'm just reading some of the rushes on this, and I'm not fully over it. The first thing I'll say is that, of course, you know, barristers and lawyers are instructed to do all sorts of cases, some of which are not terribly appetising, and we end up representing clients who perhaps most people would shudder at. What I can say, having been Solicitor General towards the latter end of this era of lawfare, is that I was appalled by the revelations about Phil Shiner and solicitors who were profiteering and making money on the backs of the misery of our gallant troops and soldiers who were doing their job, sent to fight for Queen and country and doing their job. And that whole era of lawfare, that long litany of cases that were investigated by the independent unit that was set up by government, because there were so many cases coming through relating to Iraq, was a stain, frankly, on our reputation, and something that I hope will never happen again. You know, the avalanche of legal cases being brought was horrific, and I know that many soldiers' lives and the lives of their families were affected adversely by this. So it seems to me, from my first reading of it, that there is an explanation to be given here by everybody involved, and it seems that Lord Hermer, as a public figure now, as the Attorney General, is going to have to answer some questions about this sad and sorry saga in our history.
And this has a national security implication, given that it's affecting the morale of serving soldiers. It's also causing, for example, people to quit the SAS, as we reported yesterday, because of concerns about what may happen when they retire in their service to this country. And it's going to impact recruitment as well. You need to know that if you become a soldier and fight for this country, you're not going to be subjected to this needless lawfare, Sir Robert.
Oh, no, I entirely agree, Mark. I mean, we've had international humanitarian law, the Geneva Convention, since the middle of the 19th century, and that's been well established. It's worked very well. What has happened here is that we've had further layering of different law, particularly the European Convention on Human Rights, which I don't think should be applied in theatres of war that have nothing to do with Europe, for example. And I'm not alone in that view. That's the view of many other countries, including France and other signatories to the convention. I've always felt that that was a problem that needs to be dealt with. And I also think that, you look at the Northern Ireland situation, where you had, our gallant troops serving our country, facing years of uncertainty and more than uncertainty, real strain and pressure because of potential prosecutions. When I was in government, we did legislate to end that in Northern Ireland. That's all been unpicked now once again. And we're back in a situation of uncertainty. There has to be an understanding by those in government that we owe it to not just our veterans, but to future recruits to our armed service, that we have to give maximum certainty and support, because they are serving their king and their country, and they are protecting us.
Most definitely. And what we don't want is British personnel to murder a prisoner of war, to commit a war crime, to torture somebody. But notwithstanding and above and beyond that, they need to know that the government, the authorities, have got their back as they go about their job, when they're in the caves of Afghanistan, when they're in the tinderbox of the Middle East, for example.
Well, Mark, that's absolutely right. And as you rightly reminded us, we all operate within the law and the rule of law, and British troops and British naval personnel, British air personnel are part of that, and that's how they're trained. You know, the idea that somehow we are creating armed force personnel that don't have any regard for those basic rules is nonsense, and that is drummed into everybody from the top brass right down to the newest recruit. So we have that framework. We have that international humanitarian law framework, the Geneva Convention. What I don't like seeing was that huge avalanche of speculative cases, that ambulance chasing that went on as a result of the Iraq war, and it was exposed as in many cases fraudulent, and people were disciplined and struck off because of what happened, and rightly so. We must never go back to those appalling days.
No, and it's become an industry. So, Robert, the clock's against us. Rapid fire, if I can. Have you ever been involved in the prosecution of a British soldier?
No, I haven't.
No, well, there you go. Straight answer, straight question. Zia Youssef, the would-be Home Secretary, joins us at 8 a.m. on the programme. He's hoping to deport upwards of 400,000 people who have settled status in the UK. They've received asylum, but if they've entered the country illegally, he would like them returned. The same for anyone that's overstayed their visa. Do you think that's the right policy, and will it work?
Look, I think anybody who is here unlawfully and perhaps has overstayed their visa or it has had their asylum claim rejected should go. What I have a problem with is the idea that people who have now been judged to be here lawfully should, after a few years, be told, well, actually, no, that's not right, we want you out. I think that is very, very... So
you're not happy with the idea of reversing settled status?
I think that unless there's a particular false premise or some sort of fraud has emerged, then okay. But the other problem is the practicability of this. You know, how are the countries of origin going to acknowledge who these people are and accept them back? It's going to require a huge amount of international cooperation, the sort of work that, frankly, I'm not sure that the rhetoric of reform tends to sit very easily with, bearing in mind their nationalist rhetoric. They're going to have to cooperate with other countries and play nicely if they're going to achieve what sounds to me to be a rather unrealistic policy.
I mean, just briefly, the settled status of 400,000 people who overstayed their visa and or entered the country illegally, Sir Robert, will likely come with a massive bill for the taxpayer in the lifetime of these people. Is that not a factor? And what Zia Youssef will tell me in 20 minutes' time is that the UK will exit the ECHR, tear up the Refugee Convention, have another look at the Human Rights Act. What they will do is dismantle the constitutional and legal framework that prevents these deportations.
But there's going to have to be some sort of due process and legal framework if you are dismantling all those particular structures. Look, I think the Refugee Convention needs updating. I've said it many times. I think the concept of safe country is well out of date. But I don't think that, ground sweeping statements like this are really up to the level of the level of policy that we actually need to.
Robert, is it cheap politics?
Well, look, people love to play politics with immigration because they know it presses a lot of buttons with people who are understandably concerned about the pressure that immigration can cause on public services, housing, and indeed our way of life. Now, I'm all for making sure the due process removes those people who should not be here. But what I think we fall into error in this area is making a sort of generalised approach to say, oh, well, it's going to be easy. We'll just withdraw from these conventions and everything's going to be all right. That's not how the world works. We need cooperation from other countries if we are to return people. And that, I'm afraid, is a question that does not seem to be answered by this policy announcement today.
And last but not least, it is St George's Day. Do you agree with Reform UK that the Union flag, which of course is the flag of the United Kingdom, should be flown from every school?
Well, I like that sort of idea. I think in our public buildings and public places, I think having pictures of the King, I think having the flag is a great thing, and I'm all for that. And as a proud Welshman who celebrates St David's Day back in March, I love to see St George's Day and Shakespeare's birthday, let's not forget as well, being celebrated by my friends in England. It's part of who we are in the United Kingdom, part of our rich tapestry of our home nations. I still call them the home nations. And I wish everybody a very happy St George's Day, and let's fly the flag and enjoy it.
Robert, always a pleasure to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. My thanks to Sir Robert Buckland KC, former Lord Chancellor and Justice Secretary, who says that, frankly, Reform's policy on deportation doesn't add up. Well, I'll put that to Zia Youssef live at 8 a.m. Don't miss it. Here's a voice note from Dave on the Prime Minister Keir Starmer.
Dave from Wickford. Do you not think that Starmer may call an election if he's opposed? I think he will. I think you need to consider that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Zia Youssef would be Home Secretary under a reform government live at 8 a.m. Taxpayers are to hand France another £660 million to tackle illegal immigration. Will it work, or is this throwing good money after bad? Who better to ask than Kevin Foster, former immigration minister. Good morning, Kevin.
Morning, Mark.
What do you make of this? I'm torn because on the one hand, it feels like a waste of money because we've had precious little from our investment so far in French efforts to stop the boats. On the other hand, I doubt we can stop the boats unilaterally without the support of Paris.
Yeah, Mark, I think you're right to sum it up that way. It's hard to say what would be the impact on boat numbers if there was no real French law enforcement work going on. But similarly, we can all look at how numbers have been rising again over the last 18 months, despite the deal that was done just over 3 years ago that effectively is now being changed, or as the government would argue, enhanced today. You know, it will make some difference, but it's like some of the other announcements we've seen recently, like putting drones in the channel or taking away benefits from asylum seekers who've been convicted. It'll perhaps make some difference on the edge, but it's not going to get to the core of what's really driving this issue, which is that you can leave a safe and democratic country by paying a people smuggling gang to ship you to the UK, and then you're very likely to end up staying here, even if we turn down your asylum claim.
So clearly, I would have thought you support Kemi Badenoch's position of quitting the ECHR. Would you look at the Refugee Convention as well, and possibly the Human Rights Act?
Yes, I think if you're going to leave the ECHR, then you also need to amend the Human Rights Act, because if you'd left the ECHR but left the Human Rights Act in place as it is, you'd still have the European Convention in force in law, but via domestic law rather than an international treaty. But yeah, there is a look at a wider take on this sort of Gordian knot there is of international law that makes it more difficult to remove people. I'd also add on the Statelessness Convention, which is being widely abused, written up on the idea of people like Otto Frank, who had fought for Germany and then had his citizenship taken away by Adolf Hitler when he was living in Germany, and now being abused by those who've come to this country, renounced their home citizenship after having committed criminal offences here, very serious ones, and we're looking to get rid of them and then try and argue they'd be made stateless if we did, and by removing their citizenship and then taking them out of the country. So there is a whole web of international law that was well-intentioned but is now decades old and is being gamed by people who fundamentally are leaving France to come to the UK, not because they fear persecution in France. It's ridiculous to suggest they would. It's a modern democracy, but because they prefer to be here in the UK. And we're not the only ones facing this challenge. Many others in Europe are also looking at this challenge as well.
Will Sir Keir Starmer ever stop the boats, Kevin?
No, I don't see Keir Starmer looking to stop the boats. Although, there's part of me that thinks, stop the boats like smash the gangs. They're great slogans, but what you really need is a comprehensive strategy. I suspect Shabana Mahmood gets what needs to be done. I suspect she's almost certainly spoken to colleagues in Australia and the United States of America that have successfully dealt with this type of problem, and she'll have seen what they've done. But, Keir Starmer's the man who wanted to give away the Chagos Islands because of an opinion from Lord Hermer, has spent his whole life arguing for human rights law and being a human rights lawyer, pretty much. I find it very hard to believe he's going to take the steps that are needed, including a third country agreement like Rwanda. He's made a big deal of scrapping it on day one. I suspect there's many Labour backbenchers who rather wish now that he'd given it a go.
Most definitely. Well, I'd like to take the word of the Taoiseach of the Republic of Ireland, who was complaining about Rwanda before it even started, because at that point, just the threat of Rwanda was causing boats to divert away from the UK straight to the Republic. And this is a Prime Minister that said he would scrap Rwanda even if it worked, Kevin, which is mind-boggling for an incoming Prime Minister to say that he would scrap an effective policy. But it's because they're not serious about stopping the boats. I'm not sure, Kevin, that this government care.
Well, I think there are some who do, and I expect the reason they are.
What about the PM?
Yeah, I don't think the PM particularly does. He probably sees something, probably in his heart of hearts, he thinks some of these might be prospective future Labour voters if they become citizens in future. But I think for some in the Labour Party are starting to realise that if the next general election is fought on immigration, that is not going to be a good night out for the Labour Party, both for those like you and I who want to see the problem solved, who would not be voting Labour if that's the thing we're debating, but ditto at the other end of the spectrum, those who take the rather odd view that we should be welcoming them more. Well, they can be probably more likely to go and vote Green rather than Labour. So if Labour want to be competitive at the next general election, they've got to find an actual solution for this, a strategy that works, not just another slogan that will try and get them through a 24-hour media round.
Most definitely. Before I let you go, Kevin, thank you for your time this morning. An exclusive in the Sun newspaper, families at war with Home Office. Government sneaks illegal migrants into a £500,000 semi in Leafy, Surrey. Locals only find out after one of these individuals is arrested for harassing schoolgirls. Now, we can both agree that the accommodation of illegal immigrants in hotels is an egregious waste of money and it impacts communities. And of course, they lose what is often a social hub in a hotel. But these houses of multiple occupancy are an absolute nightmare in the making, aren't they?
Yeah, I think hotels are, far from perfect, but we need to be careful when we hear governments just say, well, we'll get people out of asylum hotels. You have to ask, well, where to next? And whilst they've started to revive some of the plans there were around large military sites to be accommodation centres, which, by the way, they also scrapped when they came into government, the majority are ending up being placed into houses of multiple occupation, which are spread across communities. And whilst hotels are not perfect, far from it, at least there is some supervision there. There is some security in present. The Home Office is aware of who's in and out in the evening at a hotel. When they're just placed off in the local community, there is none of that. I think that's why people have to be a little bit careful. And when they hear sometimes ministers saying, oh, we've shut a number of hotels, OK, that's great. But if we're just pushing more and more people into houses of multiple occupation, that's the issue. It doesn't solve the fundamental problem of what are we going to do with people who have come from France? France won't take them back. We don't want them here. We can't return them to their home country, either because it's a war-torn country or a country that just refuses to accept its citizens back. What are we going to do with them? And the only way of answering that question is an agreement like Rwanda.
Kevin, happy St George's Day. Will you be doing your patriotic duty and drinking a pint of English ale in a pub this evening?
Well, I'm at St George's Day dinner tonight, so
That'll
I'll
do
probably
it.
having I'll be probably having a pint. I must say, I'm off to work today. I'll be driving, so it'll be well after I've finished driving my car. But yes, I'll be marking St George's Day with dinner this evening. I've actually got another one tomorrow night that has been organised as well. So yeah, I'll certainly be doing that. We should all be doing something to mark it today.
Most definitely. Don't forget the Nurofen. Kevin, lovely to have you on the show. We'll catch up soon. Kevin Foster, former Immigration Minister. Happy St George's Day, one and all. I love the United Kingdom and I love England. So may God bless this beautiful country, which I believe is the greatest nation in the history of the world. Just my opinion. You can cancel me if you like. Here's a voice note from Pauline on Flags.
Good morning, Mark. It's Pauline in Salford. How has it come to the stage where we are not allowed to be patriotic anymore? We're not allowed to be proud of our country. We're not allowed to fly our flags. And yet, as I drive round in Salford, I see Palestine flags hung up at the windows, but nobody complains about that. It's just so wrong. We need to start being proud of our country because it is salvageable. We just need to get Labour out. Have a great day.
Position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords, he was a Privy Councillor. The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very firm in person. But that was a live debate at the point of announcement, and I think it's important to make that clear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. In just under 10 minutes' time, we'll be joined live on the show by the would-be Reform UK Home Secretary, Zia Youssef, who's hoping to deport up to 400,000 people that entered the country illegally who have settled status. And what about this country? What about our next Prime Minister? Is Angela Rayner the answer? Lee in Margaret Harbour says, good morning, Mark. Whatever the question is, Angela Rayner is never the answer. Bill says supporting the England football team, supporting the cricket team, supporting St George's Day does not make you far right. It makes you proud to be English. Richie says, good morning, Mark. Happy St George's Day. Angela Rayner, the answer for Britain. None of them are the answer. The whole of the Labour Party needs to go. They have destroyed this country all together. This from Carol in Shoreham by Sea. Happy St George's Day to everyone at Talk. Please continue doing a wonderful job keeping the nation well informed. Carol, thank you for that. This network is nothing without you. I love England, and happy St George's Day to one and all listening to and watching the show. Let's celebrate our wonderful country in the company of Philip Keasley, who is a senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Good morning, Philip.
Good morning, Mark, and happy St George's Day to you, sir.
Today is a day to celebrate England, a remarkable country, a small pocket of land on a small island that changed the world.
It is. It's one of those moments, isn't it, where you can stop and reflect, and you can just think about the huge positive impact we have had on the world over centuries, and it is just remarkable to be able to do that. The problem we have, of course, is that politicians, the cultural elite, the chattering class, the Islamists in this country now all want us to stop doing that. They all want to problematize the flag in some kind of way.
Yeah.
We've just seen with Keir Starmer, who's going to make a speech today. He can't just say Happy St George's Day like you've been doing for the last 10 minutes, as I've just seen, like I've just done to you, like any ordinary normal person will do. He always has to bring this agenda of division into it. There's nothing divisive about the St George's Day, the Cross of St George at all. It's only divisive if you hate the country and you hate the culture in the first place. So don't bring that agenda into it. Just be happy, just enjoy yourself, and just celebrate the fact that you are in the best country in the world.
Most definitely. Well, why do you think that the English flag is so demonised? Why is it far right to love England when it isn't far right to be a proud Scot or a proud Welshman?
Yeah, I think it's down to our history and different aspects of our history. So George Orwell, didn't he, wrote a wonderful essay in 1941 called England, Your England, and he talked about how intellectuals naturally hate Britain because somehow they are embarrassed about patriotism. They're embarrassed about celebrating their own country, and we seem to have inherited that tradition. I come from an academic background. I was a lecturer in a top 10 university for 25 years, and I'm here to tell you now that they will not be celebrating St George's Day in that place. Okay, I think that's one thing. I think there's also our history as well, the fact that people can just jump on our history and say, well, it was colonialism, it was oppression. The fact that we were successful in history makes us a target. But if you think about empire, if you think about what we did in history and everywhere we went, essentially those places got better. Okay, I know it's a complex narrative, and I know that imperialism is a complex historical thing, but generally speaking, people lived longer. Infant mortality rates were far better, better rights for women, cleanliness, systems, democracy, all of those things come from Britain. So there is so much to celebrate, and it's symbolised for me in our flag, the flag of the Cross of St George.
Well, I completely agree with you. And the important thing is that we come together as a community. There's a difference, isn't there, between nationalism, which can be divisive, and patriotism, which brings people together. Ask the Ukrainians.
Absolutely. Nationalism is about looking outwards and conquering in a way, isn't it? Whereas patriotism is simply about being proud of who you are. And we encourage that in every other single demographic in the world other than our own, or probably the Americans as well.
Will you be doing anything English today?
Well, I'll be doing what every right-thinking Englishman should be doing, and I hope you'll be doing the same. I'll be raising a pint of English ale to St George, and I'll be drinking it. And not only that, I'll be drinking another one after it, and possibly another one after that.
Well, you've earned it. Philip, thank you so much for joining us to celebrate this wonderful occasion of St George's Day. Zia Youssef Reform UK's would-be Home Secretary live on the show in 2 minutes' time. And it's a very interesting conversation we're going to have. It's flags, it's patriotism, it is illegal immigration. We've got it all covered. This is Talk Breakfast. Don't go anywhere.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to provide the House with information that I now have about the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the details, I want to be very clear with this House that while this statement will focus on the process surrounding Peter Mandelson vetting an appointment, at the heart of this, there is also a judgment I made that was wrong.
The name had been submitted to the King as Minister's recommendation. The Prime Minister had made an announcement that Mandelson was his nominee without caveats. The British government had sought agrément, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. The position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Coming up to 3 minutes past 8, Mark Dolan on Talk Breakfast. A big question this morning. Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? We'll bring more on that story. A Prime Minister on the brink. How long has Starmer got? But we'll kick off the hour with an announcement from Reform UK, who have unveiled plans to introduce a patriotic curriculum in schools within the first 100 days of its government. Under the proposals, every school would also be required to fly the Union flag and feature a portrait of the King in a communal place. Why is this being announced? Is it the right thing to do? Who better to ask than the would-be Home Secretary under a Reform UK government, Zia Youssef. Good morning, Zia.
Good morning.
There's a difference, isn't there, between nationalism and patriotism is something of huge value that we've lost in recent years.
Absolutely. And I think it's important that your listeners and viewers understand the severity of this situation in this country now with young people. So 20 years ago, 8 in 10 young people in Britain said that they were proud to be British. That number is halved now. So only 40% of young people in Britain say they're proud to be British. Less than 1 in 5 young people have a positive view, even have a positive view of Sir Winston Churchill, who not long ago, of course, was crowned by the BBC as the greatest Brit ever to have lived by BBC viewers. That wasn't that long ago. So things are moving very quickly. And one of the reasons is that children, in many cases, are being taught in schools to despise their own country, being told that Britain is fundamentally racist, that Britain's history is one that we should all be fundamentally ashamed of, none of which is obviously true. And so what we're going to do is, number one, make changes to the curriculum so that children are taught the truth, you know, the great aspects around our history. Yes, they should learn the things that we should be less proud of, but British children are simply not being taught that, for example, no country did more to end slavery than Britain. The West Africa Squadron, His Majesty's Royal Navy at the time, the mightiest navy in the world, sacrificed tens of thousands of its own sailors, billions of pounds, you know, in real terms, to uphold the prohibition on slavery on the high seas. Children are not taught that. In fact, they're taught the very opposite, that actually Britain owes a great debt in the form of reparations to many other countries. So this is really, really toxic. The second thing we're going to do is ensure that all schools fly the Union flag. Obviously in England it would also be, they have two flagpoles, the St George's flag, and obviously in Wales the Welsh flag, and likewise in Scotland. We would also make sure that every school had a portrait of His Majesty the King up on the wall. And here's another quite scary statistic for you. Just a couple of years ago, every school in the country was offered a portrait of His Majesty, and that was free for them if they took it up. And 2/3 of schools, state schools in this country, refused. They declined it, even though it was free. So I think your listeners and viewers should ask themselves, why? Why would they decline such a thing? Look, any serious country that has national pride teaches children to be proud of their country. That's what Japan does. It's what America does. It's even what France does. You know, we really stand as one of very few countries in the world that seems to be teaching children not only to not be proud of their country, but to despise it. And, you know, I've done the morning media round today, and it was put to me by Good Morning Britain, the host there, saying, oh, well, some people see our flag as deeply divisive and are upset by it. And, you know, that speaks to the fundamental point here. How can flying our country's national flag be divisive? And to the degree there are people who think that, and know that there are some, it is precisely because they've been now conditioned to think that. So it is up to us to do something about it. And look, government can't solve all of these problems. We accept that. There are many reasons why young people should feel disenfranchised and frankly betrayed. I think the game is rigged against young people massively in terms of our economy, and reform would change that. But we've got to get a handle of what's going on in our schools and teach our children that, yes, of course, there are some aspects of Britain's history of which we should not be proud and should be taught that. But we should be so proud of the enormous amount of good that Britain has done for the world. I think Britain has the richest history in the world, and one of which we should be most proud.
Well, most definitely, to see the flag as divisive is a highly political interpretation. The bottom line, Zia Youssef, is a flag cannot be weaponized. It is the flag of the country, and patriotism is what binds a nation together. Ask the Ukrainians, who are facing off the military might of Vladimir Putin and the Russian soldiers as we speak. And patriotism, national unity, the flag, is what will bring together our increasingly divided society.
I couldn't agree more. I could not agree more. That's exactly the point. What else are we going to unite behind? You know, what else are young people and children going to unite behind? Because that flag, you can get behind that if you're British, regardless of the colour of your skin, regardless of your sexuality or religion or any other, characteristic that people like to slice and dice our population by. It is a unifying factor, and things are moving in a very dangerous direction. It's no surprise, therefore, that only a minority of our young people would say that they would fight for the country if they were asked. And again, the flag in itself, I just want to be crystal clear, what we're announcing today is not a silver bullet. You know, there are many reasons why young people quite rightly feel disenfranchised. But it is a start. It is a foundation. And, you know, there is a crisis. You know, people talk about a crisis of meaning, you know, and mental health and all of these things. And as a human being, we need something to attach ourselves to, you know, a wagon to which we hitch our own lives. And I think being proud of Britain and being proud of our country, and yes, being proud of our flag and proud of the King and respecting that, is a really important bedrock for the kind of Britain that we at Reform want to see. We want to see a Britain that is proud, prosperous, powerful, in which people feel like they are connected. And no matter what job you're doing, where you are in society, you feel like you are connected to that national story and a story of national success. And so therefore, yes, of course, this is not a silver bullet, but it's a really important foundation, without which I'm afraid we're just going to continue to descend into the chaos that I think we're already starting to see the signs of.
And Zia Youssef, you would like to review 5 years' worth of asylum grants. This could affect upwards of 400,000 people who have settled status in the country but who entered Britain illegally or overstayed their visas. Your view is they have no moral authority to stay in this country to have that settled status. It's a bold plan, but will you be thwarted in office by the public institutions of this country?
Well, I want to firstly be clear that we announced our plan last summer, Operation Restoring Justice, to deport those in this country illegally, right? So that's the first thing. What we announced a few days ago is on top of that. So now we're talking about people who entered illegally, for example, but had then been granted the right to remain here and therefore had become legal by Tory governments and now by this Labour government. There's north of 100,000 still in the backlog. A lot of those are going to get waved through. Our position is this, that Section 24 of the Immigration Act 1971 is crystal clear. If you come and turn up on our beaches without a visa, without permission, you are breaking the law. And it is only down to the cowardice of Tory and Labour politicians that law has not been enforced. And so therefore, yes, absolutely, we will go through. And if you arrived illegally or you came in on false pretense, you came in on a student visa, which many do, 1 in 8 people in the asylum backlog last year came in on student visas or came in on another visa and then overstayed to claim asylum. I'm sorry, you are not going to be allowed to stay. And in terms of whether the institutions will try to block us, look, I really hope that they won't, but my baseline assumption, and Nigel's and everyone at Reform, our assumption is that they will. We will be prepared. I've met some great people at the Home Office. There are some excellent people at the Home Office. I'm afraid there are also many political activists working at the Home Office who, I'm afraid, from what I can tell, and I'm hearing this from whistleblowers, are actively working against the interests of the British people. And by the way, the Home Office were briefing to the media just a few weeks ago, remember, that if Reform won, they would stage a walkout. Just imagine how insane it is that the ministry that is charged with defending and securing our borders would threaten to walk out from their jobs in protest if a Reform government came to power, which would, of course, ostensibly be on the basis of securing and defending our borders. The whole thing is insane. So we will be prepared. We are working on significant reforms to that. And I want to remind people, too, that Parliament in this country is sovereign. There's a real kind of learned helplessness that has seeped in to people who look at British politics. Who think, oh, no matter what the government tries to do, the courts will stop you. Governments can write the laws. The reason why the votes keep coming is because not a single thing that government should have done through primary legislation has been done, even leaving the ECHR, derogating from things like the 1951 Refugee Convention, declaring that if you come to the country illegally, you will never be allowed to stay, detaining people and deporting them rather than giving them 4-star hotel accommodation at taxpayer expense. Any sensible person looking at this can see that this is solvable. The only thing that has been lacking, and this is actually why it is hard, you need not only a Prime Minister who believes this in their heart, which we will have in Nigel, but also you're going to need a Reform majority. This is why we can't have pacts with these Tories who got us into the problem that we're in. This is why it's not just about tribalism. It's because if we don't get a Reform majority, I don't believe that we're going to be able to do these things. But if we do, you better believe those things will get done. They will get done quickly. And people will suddenly realise, oh, actually, governments can do things.
Now, it's my understanding that Reform are hoping many of these people, the 400,000 earmarked for a return to their home country, will go voluntarily, incentivised by up to £1,000 each. Is that correct?
Well, it's a really important point to make here. So in coming up with our plans, we've done a lot of study of countries that have had successful mass deportation programs. And you can actually look at America there in terms of absolute numbers. They were very big. And actually, I know a lot of your listeners might not be his biggest fan, but ironically, it was President Obama. And this always makes Guardian journalists' heads explode when you remind them that President Obama deported millions of people. He earned the moniker
3.5 million, I believe.
In chief.
Yeah.
And so, so what's really important here is that when you look at the data there, what they saw was when enforced removals, meaning people being detained forcibly and forcibly put onto planes and deported. As those start to go up significantly, voluntary removals start to go up a lot too. In fact, the Trump administration literally launched a self-deportation app. And so what you see is it's human nature, right? It's if you receive a letter from UK Deportation Command, our new agency under reform, saying you've got 30 days to leave of your own volition, and yeah, okay, we'll get your flight for you. You're going to have to leave. And if you do not leave in that time frame, we will enforce. And you actually believe that will happen, behavior changes. That's what all of the historical precedent shows. So our expectation is not anything other than we will have to forcibly deport hundreds of thousands of people. But I will tell you this, all of the precedent set from other countries, as I said, including America, shows once you start doing that, yes, a lot of people will leave of their own volition. On top of, Mark, here's the other really important point. We're going to terminate welfare payments for all foreign nationals. And by the way, if you come into contact with the state and you're here illegally, you're going to be detained. You're not going to get to wander around hotels and, in some cases, terrorize local communities and young girls. You're not going to get free days out and activities. And I know this stuff's happening because I've seen the invoices myself from some of this council spending. So, look, the key things we've got to do in this country are take away the incentive and then create a massive disincentive for people to come here. That's how you solve the problem.
It is mind-boggling that people that enter the country illegally, whose background and whose criminal CV we have no knowledge of, are free to walk the streets. It is extraordinary. It's deck chairs on the Titanic taking people out of migrant hotels into homes of multiple occupancy, which, Zia, could potentially be even worse because these folk then are part of our community's neighbours, coming to a neighbourhood near you. I thought, though, it will balk the idea for some of my viewers and listeners of paying illegals any money to leave. This will be a hard pill to swallow for many of your supporters. What would your response be to that?
Yeah, I totally understand that. And it's an extremely hard pill for us too. All I would say is, again, we look at the data, and enforced removal does cost, even when we're doing it at that kind of scale, it just does cost more. And so therefore, look, we're going to deport hundreds of thousands of people in an enforced manner. But the fact of the matter is we want to make sure we do this in as economically sensible way as possible so that excess money can be spent where it's needed right here at home. And I want to make this point too, this British taxpayers are already spending north of £7 billion a year just on the line items we do know about that these people are costing us. Things like accommodation. The government doesn't disclose the burden on, for example, the NHS and all of the other aspects that these people cost us. So in the end, it's actually extremely good value for. I totally understand where that's coming from, but you've got to remember, we are deadly serious about actually doing this. This isn't just lip service. It's not just a political slogan or a campaign. And if it was a reform government, I'd be charged with doing this. I'd be the Home Secretary. I take that responsibility extremely seriously. It's why I came into politics. I'm not a career politician. I'm doing this because I want to see a country that upholds its laws. I want every illegal migrant in this country gone from these shores. And by the way, those who broke in illegally, who have then been granted legal status, they shouldn't be allowed to stay either. Once we start doing those things, Mark, we're going to start feeling like we have a proper country again.
Well, I don't know who with half a brain cell would spend thousands of pounds crossing the channel on a small boat if they knew that they were going to be detained on arrival and then deported. It's quite clear that illegal immigration is a societal, economic and national security catastrophe, and it's an emergency. This government think they've got the answer, Zia. Another £660 million to the French to stop the boats. Will it work?
Well, obviously not. And you just look at the data. I mean, there's an abundance now of data we can look at. British taxpayers have already sent £700 million to the French governments to stop the boats, firstly by Tories and now by Labour. Do you remember Siobhan Mahmood made this big deal saying, I'm going to play hardball. The Tory deal was awful. We need to make this contingent on performance. So if the French keep laughing at us and keep taking pictures of small boats that they're literally ushering off their shores to come to Britain, they're not going to get paid anything. Do you remember when she said that? It was only about a week and a half ago. Well, what's happened? The vast majority of the deal, of the money in the deal, she has just agreed the French get to keep, even if they don't intercept or stop a single boat. The French are laughing at us. And the shameful thing about all of this is the reason why British taxpayers are being forced to throw good money after bad is simple. It's because, just like the Tories, the Labour Party has no appetite to leave the ECHR, no appetite to reform the laws around international treaties, derogate from the 1951 Refugee Convention, and no appetite to detain people who have obviously broken our laws by coming here illegally in the first place. And so what they tried to do is signal their intent. First it was smashing the gangs. Remember, how's that worked out? And that's why this problem is simply not going to go away. And if you want the boats to stop and you want people in this country illegally to be deported, then you need to vote for reform.
Well, the constitutional and legal infrastructure of this country makes it impossible to tackle the problem at the moment. There needs to be change. Some will be encouraged, Zia, by news that riot-trained police will be sent to beaches in France as part of this New Deal. And also, is the painful, honest truth that when and if you become Home Secretary, you will have to deal with the French, that the boats cannot be unilaterally stopped without support and help from Paris?
Well, so the first thing to say is I do not buy into this notion that we need other countries to agree about whether we have a border. All right, so let's get that notion out of the picture. It is incumbent on British leaders and British politicians to secure our border. Yeah, you can talk to other countries and it'd be great if France cooperated. But the notion, I'm not buying this garbage that you need to go and beg the president of France to let us have a border. That is
but if you turn around the boats in the Channel, the French won't take them back. You're going to have to deal with the French when you become, and if you become Home Secretary.
Yeah. So I understand the point that you're making. And look, as I said, if we do all of the things I just talked about in my previous answer, the boats are going to stop coming anyway. But let's address the point on turnbacks. No one has done more to address this point, actually, than Nigel Farage, even though he's not even the Prime Minister yet. So he met Jordan Bardella, and it's obviously not certain. Anything can happen in politics. One doesn't want to presume anything. But he is by far and away leading opinion polls, and by far and away the bookmakers' favourite to be the next leader of France. And therefore, if Nigel wins in Britain, again, an assumption, we take nothing for granted, a long way to go. But if that happened, then he would be the person he would be negotiating with. And Bardella has literally said publicly that he would accept Britain doing turnbacks. And I think that's a stunning achievement for Nigel to have achieved before he's even, won a general election. So these things can be done. People have not, in this country, have not had a prime minister really for decades who has really stood up and fought tooth and nail for the interests of the British people. And we're negotiating against people like Macron who do that for I mean, I can't stand Macron, but you got to give him credit where it's due. I mean, he's now managed to graze another hundreds of millions of pounds of British taxpayer money to not stop the boats, where the majority of it he gets to keep, whether or not he keeps his end of the bargain. You got to hand it to him for his negotiating skills and ask why on earth yet again we have a Prime Minister and a Home Secretary incapable of doing the most basic deals for Britain.
Most definitely. Zia, we know you have to run. Just briefly, if you can, your contempt for the Conservatives is understandable, given that they inflicted the worst excesses of net zero on the country, eye-watering legal and illegal immigration, in my view, a COVID overreaction, not to mention an ever-expanding state. However, you're going to need to attract those moderate Conservative voters who quite like Kemi and don't much like the look of Nigel. How are you going to do that?
Well, we're speaking to everyone in the country. And, look at the result yesterday overnight in Salford. There was a council by-election in Salford. And look, it's one by-election, but this is an absolute Labour heartland. They won that same seat with north of 60% of the vote last time, and Reform have come straight in and won that. The Tories down in the single digits. So it is us that is the greatest threat in red wall seats and in many of those Labour heartlands too. So look, we want to win as many voters as we can over to Reform. But I will say this, it is really, I'm going to keep saying it, that if we allow the Tories to resuscitate their reputations, having, as you pointed out, spent 14 years burning the house, burning the country to the ground, basically, we're just going to get exactly the same thing again. And I think that, that this notion of a Kemi bounce is not being reflected at voting booths. And actually, even pollsters like YouGov, for example, that were sort of trying to put us neck and neck with the Tories for some time, and have now given us, I think it was a 9 or 10-point lead in the latest one. So look, let's see what happens on May the 7th. I encourage anyone who wants secure borders, even if you'd voted Tory historically, if you want secure borders, if you want law and order, if you want illegal migrants deported, then you need a vote. And by the way, you want a smaller state, welfare brought under control, and taxes start to come down, and people being able to keep more of their money. Obviously, as our nation's finances allow. If you want those things, there is only one path right now for that to happen. And all of the actual election results we're seeing shows it's certainly not the Conservative Party. And actually, by voting for the Tories, you may end up inadvertently either letting Starmer back in or maybe even a Zach Polanski, which would obviously be even worse.
Zia Youssef, happy St George's Day. Thank you so much for joining us on Talk Breakfast. We'll catch up soon. My thanks to the Reform UK Shadow Home Secretary, Zia Youssef. Now, of course, you can vote for any party in the local elections. Have a look at your candidate list and may the best man or woman win. Delighted now to head, I believe. Are we going to Westminster? We are. Let's head to College Green and Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Hello, Mel. Welcome to Talk Breakfast.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning.
We've just been hearing from Reform UK's Shadow Home Secretary, so to speak, their Home Affairs spokesperson, if you want to be belt and braces about it. And it's an attractive offer that Reform UK have to the electorate, isn't it? They're going to cut public spending, they're going to end illegal immigration and tackle the Boris wave, which comes with an enormous financial and societal bill. What's not to like?
Well, I think what's not to like, Mark, is whether these are credible offers. And I think you'd have to judge Reform by what they've said in the past and what they've subsequently done, for example. So they went into the last election offering £140 billion worth of spending increases and tax cuts. They then resigned entirely from that because they knew that it was fiscally totally irresponsible. They've come forward with a plan to assist the retail, hospitality and leisure sector, which has a £10 billion black hole in it. And Lee Anderson goes on the radio and says, well, I'm not interested in the numbers. And therein lies the problem, I think, with Reform. And we've also seen it where they've been successful electorally in local authorities. I mean, look at Worcester Shire Council, where they said that they would be, cutting these council taxes. They put council tax up by 9%.
And as you'll understand, Mel Stride, we're not able to talk in specifics about local government and councils given the elections in May, but I take your point. I think your view is that Reform's numbers don't add up.
No, absolutely. This is an outfit that will say anything, pull any stunt to tell people they can have all sorts of goodies, all sorts of tax cuts, etc., but they have no real plan as to how we're going to deliver that. And sadly, in the past, of course, and this is a point about a brief moment in the history of my party, we see where that leads, and it's not to a good place. So I think Reform would be very dangerous on the economy, actually.
Mel, is there not simply an appetite for what I would describe as full-fat conservatism that arguably we haven't seen since the 80s and Margaret Thatcher? Isn't that where the Conservatives missed a trick in the course of 14 years of power?
Well, look, I think we did a number of things that were really good. We were a job-creating machine as a government. We created 4 million new jobs over our period in office. We got us through that COVID crisis, supporting jobs as well. We brought in universal credit, which made sure that work paid. When it came to benefits. I did a lot of work towards the tail end of the government, getting the trajectory of the benefits bill down. And we had inflation down on the day of the last general election, bang on target at 2%. It's now almost double that, at the same time as having near record levels of employment and near record low levels of unemployment. But undoubtedly, we also did make mistakes. But we're under new leadership now under Kemi Badenoch, and we are taking the tough and purposeful decisions to make sure we address the issues that really matter to the British people. And that's why we've had a lot to say about net migration, illegal migration. We've had a lot to say about getting taxes down, getting people off welfare and into work to strengthen our economy. So look, this is new leadership. And I think we are coming up with the deep and thoughtful answers to some real tough problems that the country faces. We're not doing what Reform do, which is to just jump up and down and promise everybody everything without having a proper plan for delivery.
Well, the Conservatives' record on unemployment is outstanding, going way back, as you'll remember, to the credit crunch. And I believe that between 2010 and 2015, 1 million jobs were created in the private sector thanks to business-friendly policies. Unfortunately, we're not seeing those now. We've got the scandal around Peter Mandelson and Sir Keir Starmer and the vetting, but actually that's a distraction from the big headache, which is the parlous state of the economy, Mel. We are in serious financial trouble.
We are really in serious financial trouble. Look, we've got a huge mountain of debt in a relatively higher interest rate environment now, so the servicing costs on that debt alone are over £100 billion a year. That's about twice what we spend on defence. We've seen a government that's taxing businesses, literally in many cases, out of existence. And that's part of the story for higher inflation, higher unemployment and lower growth. And of course, we've got a government, we've had some figures this morning, showing that they're actually borrowing in the last year about 70% more than the forecasts at the time that we were in office. And if you borrow vast amounts of money, spend vast amounts of money, you stoke inflation, and that of course makes people poorer. So we need a fundamental reset. Get on top of public spending, particularly the welfare bill, get people off benefits into work. You can then use that money to start paying down the debt and get taxes down to boost growth.
And of course, growth in 2024 under Rishi Sunak, January 2024, was the highest in the G7. July 2024, we had 2% inflation, and unemployment was a rounding error, trivial figures. All of that has gone horribly wrong. And what about the future of the Prime Minister? He's clearly feeling the heat regarding the Mandelson scandal. Do you think that he's toast? Do you think we'll have a new Prime Minister by the autumn?
I think his position is extraordinarily precarious now. You can sense it, Mark, in the House of Commons. You know, when the Prime Minister comes in for Prime Minister's questions, as he did yesterday, you'd normally get this huge roar of support from his side behind him. It was extraordinarily muted, and you're beginning to see Labour MPs, and even there's briefings from discussions within the Cabinet about serious misgivings from within the Labour ranks about his future. This is a distraction, as you rightly say. There are big problems that our country faces, and I don't think we can afford Keir Starmer any longer. The route to him leaving, of course, lies in the hands predominantly of the parliamentary Labour Party and the Cabinet, and it really is time for them to act, I think.
And finally, Shadow Chancellor, may I wish you a very happy St George's Day. Are you planning on celebrating? Will you do your patriotic duty and find an excellent hostelry in Westminster and drink a pint of English ale?
I've done much of that in the past, Mark. If I have time today, I will pop into a local pub. It's a great day, and it's also, I think, also Shakespeare's birthday today, and we should never forget one of our greatest cultural icons that this country has ever produced.
Very grateful for your valuable time. My thanks to Mel Stride, who is the Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer. Your reaction to all of this, 0344 499 1000. Lots more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson. He was a member of the House of Lords, he was a Privy Councillor, The risks that attending his appointment were well known and had been made clear to the Prime Minister before appointment. Now, in the end, the FCDO insisted and put its foot down. I understand my predecessor had to be very firm in person. But that was a live debate at the point of announcement, and I think it's important to make that clear.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, 8:35. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. Can I wish each and every one of you in England a very happy St. George's Day. What an extraordinary and magical country England is. It's given so much to the world that I think, frankly, it's punched above its weight. This small pocket of land on a small island transformed the world, largely for the better. Here's a voice note from Dan on patriotism.
Good morning, Mark. It's Dan from Kent. It's ironic that Reform announced a policy to deport all those that shouldn't be here, yet they're seen as racist and far right. But it's okay for Australia to do the same, Poland to secure their borders, Hungary, who get fined daily by the European. It's the same with the flag. You can raise a flag on a lamppost. You're seen as far right, racist, disgusting. But we're supposed to defend our flag on a war footing. And 50 days' time, you've got the World Cup. People will be flying it on their car. They won't be seen as racist or far right. I think we've come to a point in our history where we need to defend our rights and remember who we are.
Most definitely, Dan. And this is not a gimmick, the flag. Patriotism is what binds a nation together. We have a multi-ethnic society, no problem, but it needs to be united around Englishness and Britishness. And it doesn't make you far right to think that. Happy St. George's Day, one and all. Now, the name David Maddox is one that will likely go down in political history, particularly if Sir Keir Starmer falls amid the Mandelson vetting scandal. And David Maddox joins us now, political editor of The Independent. Good morning, David.
Morning, Mark.
You've got more.
Very kind.
I will say that your name sends a shiver down the spine of the number 10 media operation, because you've got another exclusive. Starmer sacked Ollie Robbins before he could defend himself over Mandelson's scandal, allies say. What's the story here?
So this is about the actual sacking of Ollie Robbins, and it's important to just remember the context of this, because on Monday in his statement, the Tory MP Julian Lewis asked the Prime Minister direct if he'd asked for an explanation from Ollie Robbins and what he received. And the Prime Minister's answer in the Commons chamber was, "I asked for an explanation, I didn't like the answer, so I sacked him." Now, what we have been told by friends close to Sir Ollie is that the conversation did not go like that. He was not asked for any explanation. There's no question. It was basically the Prime Minister saying, "I'm disgusted with you, you're sacked." And, so there's a number of issues at play here. It looks like the Prime Minister, if this is true, of course, it looks like the Prime Minister did not actually thoroughly go into the details with Sir Ollie, which I'm afraid seems to be a pattern. So it does have a kind of ring of truth to it. And B, it would have meant that he's misled Parliament, which, of course, going back to Boris Johnson, is the reason that Boris Johnson, got into trouble in the end. And it's just, there's a pattern here. Now, interestingly, when I put this to Downing Street, they said they stand by the Prime Minister's words, but Downing Street's source then clarified with me that, in fact, they'd asked Ollie Robbins for an explanation before the telephone conversation and suggested that it hadn't happened in the telephone conversation. So when the Prime Minister himself was involved, there was no kind of attempt to get to the bottom of what happened. Now, this, the other side of this is this could end up being incredibly expensive for the taxpayer. I've forgotten the enormous sum they gave to Peter Mandelson when they sacked him for being a liar.
70,000, I think it was, in that region. which we were told by a government minister was a bargain.
Yes, exactly. Which I think a few of us would question that, but it's but you know, if due process was not followed with Sir Ollie, if he was wrongfully dismissed, I mean, because we have to, you know, caveat all these things, but if so, it's going to be a huge payout, and who's going to be on the hook? It's not going to be Keir Starmer. It's going to be us, the taxpayer.
And the political price will be a high one too, won't it? And it's my understanding, David, that it's not just retired civil servants. For example, the former Cabinet Secretary, Mark Sedwill, I think his name is, who's said that Ollie Robbins should be reinstated. But there are lots of figures in Whitehall, and there are plenty of figures in the Cabinet who are unhappy about the treatment of Ollie Robbins.
It's true, and it was interesting even yesterday, Pat McFadden, the ultimate loyalist, the person they just wheel out to straight bat everything and be the kind of defensive wall for this government. Even he was struggling to say, well, he refused to say that the sacking was fair, and that was, you know, that spoke volumes. I mean, it's these small details which just shout out that there's a lot of discomfort. I mean, the day before we had Ed Miliband saying how he'd raised concerns, how David Lammy had raised concerns about the Mandelson appointment in the first place. The wagons are uncircling around this Prime Minister, and they are getting ready for a change.
And the image of Sir Keir Starmer as Mr. Rules, as the pen pusher, as the guy that's all about procedure, has been shot to pieces in recent days, hasn't it?
Well, it has. I mean, it's what he tries to hold on to for his defence. I mean, he was certainly, you know, he was in PMQs yesterday. He was cherry picking every bit of Ollie Robbins' evidence to try and defend himself. But you know, it's the wider picture. You know, it's this guy who will literally sacrifice anybody to save his skin, and apparently won't ask any difficult questions just in case he might get blamed in the future, which is, you know, he's not some kind of mid-ranking bureaucrat. He's a prime minister of his country. He is the person where the buck stops. And, you know, the way he has been willfully ignorant. I mean, I get back to, of course, you know, I was on your show yesterday, and thank you very much for that as well, you know, but it was, you know, we were talking about my story back in September. You know, they should have known at the latest in September that there was a problem with vetting. But, you know, this Prime Minister seems to want to hide from the difficult questions.
What was his lack of awareness of what was happening with security vetting? Incompetence? Was it an oversight? Or was it by design, David?
Well, this is the question that MPs are asking, and you know, many of them are coming to the conclusion that it was actually by design. Now, of course, none of us know. We don't know what's going on in the Prime Minister's head. It's probably quite a messy place at the moment. But it's you know, it's there's this pattern emerging now of, you know, not asking questions, just expecting people to get things done and then blame them.
Well, is it a case of, could it potentially be a case of get the job done, but don't tell me anything about it? A little Don Corleone commissions the execution of Jack the Hat McVitie, but make sure that there's no paper trail that gets to the boss.
Exactly. It's exactly that. And that is a pattern that's emerging.
That's a pattern which is emerging. And let's take a listen to Prime Minister's questions. Kemi Badenoch asking Keir Starmer if he will resign.
Due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment, and anyone in my position would have lost confidence in the former Permanent Secretary. But, Mr Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition claimed on Friday that Mandelson could not have been cleared against security advice. She was wrong about that.
Yeah.
She said that ministers must have been told. She was wrong about that. She claimed there was deliberate dishonesty. She was wrong about that. Wrong, wrong, wrong. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
David, notwithstanding our discussion about Starmer and that he's in deep political trouble, I was actually quite surprised by the sort of confident, robust exchange at the dispatch box yesterday. This guy's not going down without a fight.
This job without a fight. We saw it with Boris. I mean, the only person who kind of just threw in the towel quickly was Liz Truss. I actually think that in some ways that makes her a better Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. At least she knew she was incapable of the job and walked out. He's doing the traditional thing of clinging on by his fingernails. The trouble is nobody seems to want him there anymore. They just, the Labour MPs just can't work out who on earth to replace him with, and that's the only thing that's keeping him in Downing Street.
Most definitely. I mean, I think the smart money's on Big Ange once HMRC rule. But briefly, David, I know you've got to run. Notwithstanding who might replace him, how long do you think the Prime Minister has got? I mean, is it, are we looking at leadership elections in the summer?
Well, I've had, a number of people, including Labour MPs, have had the local and devolved elections on May the 7th. It's kind of circled in red. If the results are as apocalyptic as some polls and surveys have suggested, and we obviously can't take voters for granted, but if they are, then I think that is the moment where Labour MPs have got to decide which one, whether it's Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband or Wes Streeting or whoever, replaces him. Otherwise, I think they may be stuck with him if they don't.
Wow. David, keep up the history-making journalism. My thanks to David Maddox, political editor of The Independent, the man at the very heart of this story, who reached out to Number 10 in September of last year with the Mandelson vetting outcome. And the rest, of course, is history. Neil is in Buckinghamshire. Neil, lovely to have you on Talk Breakfast. We're going to give the French another £660 million to stop the boats. Will it work?
No, of course it won't. But what we can do is we can say to them, for every 10 people or 20 people, we take one fishing licence off the French fishermen. The French fishermen, they will stop the boats for us because they want their licences. It's simple. And then the migrants are going to think, hang on a minute, we're not going to get across there, so they won't go to France either.
Brilliant. Neil, what an outstanding and simple solution. Take away the licences for all the migrants that cross the channel. Hit them where it hurts. Neil, thank you for that. Wish we had longer. Here is a voice note from Karen on the magical celebration of St George's Day.
Well, listening to Mel Stride at the end of your interview with him when you said, you're going to celebrate St George's Day. And he said, it's a great day. But let's not forget Shakespeare's birthday today. What are they afraid of? Here comes that race relations thing that they're scared of. It's a patriotic day for the British community. We need to take back our culture and be proud of our history. I'm getting sick and tired of these politicians, going, but let's not forget about Shakespeare, or let's not forget about Mr. bloody Kipling or whatever. I mean, come on. It's St George's Day. We need our flags out. I'm getting sick and tired of our flag being hijacked and being deemed as a racist symbol. Enough.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Talk Breakfast, 8:51. Happy St George's Day to everyone listening and watching in England. Georgina in Cambridge. Good morning, Mark. How on earth are the people who hate our flag going to cope if England do well in the World Cup? The amount of arrests could be mind-boggling. And Dave in Bristol, I'd be interested to know what other countries teach their children about their history. Germany and Japan, both of whom have questionable recent histories, for example. Even France and Napoleon's imperial attempts to rule Europe resulted in a huge loss of life and devastation. Yeah, Dave, it's only the English who have to apologise for their past, even though we gave the world the Industrial Revolution, representative democracy, the rule of law, free markets, ended slavery. Elton John, Candle in the Wind, which was number 11 in the charts when I was born. You Are Welcome, Shakespeare, all the rest of it. Folks, let's get to a very important story. The head of the Met Police has expressed his support for a Morrison's store manager who lost his job after physically confronting a shoplifter. Sir Mark Rowley praised Sean Egan's actions and said he would always encourage members of the public to assist in tackling crime. Mr Egan had spent nearly 3 decades working for Morrison's at the Aldridge branch near Walsall in the West Midlands before his dismissal. Let's get further reaction to this shocking story in the company of Chris Noyce, who is from the Association of Convenience Stores. Hello, Chris.
Morning.
Chris, it's lovely to have you on the show. We know that shoplifting is really bad news for all of the big supermarkets because customers ultimately pay the price, but it's particularly bad for convenience stores because they cannot afford that loss of stock, and often it's just 1 or 2 people on duty who are in no position to stop this crime from happening.
Absolutely right. So the situation in convenience stores is very challenging. Convenience stores themselves have invested over £300 million in the last year alone in crime prevention measures.
Money they don't have, Chris.
Money they don't have, exactly right. But when they talk about what they're investing, actually they can get more return on crime prevention investment than they can on any other thing. So what is happening here is stores are becoming less and less competitive because they're having to become more and more safe. And as you say, 1 or 2 people on staff at the same time. These are not stores that can afford separate security staff, additional security to make that store safer. So yeah, really challenging time for our sector at the moment.
And we really value our convenience stores because they stay open late. It's long hours. They are a hub in the community. They are providing infrastructure because you can get a bottle of milk or a tin of beer or a loaf of bread. Our convenience stores are critical to this country.
So you're right, yeah, 50,000 convenience stores across the UK, one pretty much in every postcode, and that goes across all ages and demographics as well. Young people tell us that one of the main reasons why they like convenience stores is because they do their main shop there. They do, shopping that they can't get anywhere else. So yeah, convenience stores really important, and really sad to see that every year we have to talk about 5-6 million incidents of theft facing our sector alone.
Yes, and these stores, they're friendly. They know who you are. They know your kids. They're part of the community. They are open when Tesco and Sainsbury's are shut. And actually, I just wonder, Chris, the architecture of these convenience stores makes it even more difficult for them to stop shoplifting, doesn't it? Because you might have a small retail unit with very high packed shelves, and it's easy for these criminals to come in and find a dark corner in a convenience store and fill their boots.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, and that's why there's lots of work being done to talk about designing out crime, so making shelves heights lower and making it easier to see people. But the one thing that we recommend that retailers and their colleagues do is to make people aware that they've been seen as they come into the store. So even if there's 1 or 2 people in, if the till point is near the entrance, as someone comes in, you just say to them, hello, how you doing? Anything I can help you with? Can I get you a basket? And that's at its heart, it's just good customer service. But also what it does subtly is it says, I've seen you coming in, I know that you're here, and you would be amazed at how many incidents that actually prevents because people think, oh, actually, no, they know what I'm doing here.
I'm glad to hear that. Now, I won't defend shoplifting, whether it's in a big supermarket or in a convenience store, but the issue is, Chris, that Tesco and Sainsbury's can swallow that cost, not to justify it, but they can swallow that cost. Convenience stores can't, and many of them now are not viable because of shoplifting.
Convenience stores, lots of independent retailers run convenience stores. Over 2/3 of our sector is run by independent retailers. Some of them live above the shop or next to the shop. So theft for them is a very personal thing. You are stealing directly from their livelihoods, and the amount of money that's being lost through theft and other crimes, you're right, it can be the difference between a store making a profit in a year and making a loss. So yeah, really business critical impact just with theft alone.
And it's really a problem just on a personal basis, isn't it? Well, there might be one person that's on duty behind the till for 12 hours. They're on their own. That's the business model. They can't afford 6 or 7 members of staff. It's 1 or 2 people. And so when there is a violent thug that comes in, you know, it's difficult for them to apprehend that criminal. Why should they put their lives on the line for a tin of beans or a loaf of bread?
We can understand a lot of frustrations, particularly for retailers that see this happening a lot. They'll see the same people coming in again and again, and they'll think, you know, nothing else is happening, we're reporting, you know, we need to do something ourselves. The one thing that is absolutely constant throughout this is people are always more important than property. There is never really a safe way to intervene with a thief or someone being abusive, because you don't know what they could have on them. We know that there are thousands of violent incidents a year. There are thousands of incidents involving weapons, and we would never want any of our colleagues to be put in that position.
There you go. Let me tell you that the convenience stores are the bedrock of our country, just like the local pub and the local cafe. So important, Chris. So much personality, these independent outlets. May God bless them. Thank you for representing them. And Chris Noyce, more to come.
I hope I wouldn't have used that. Well, certainly I don't remember trying to get any job for my mates.
Can you get a job? Can you help get a job for ex's mates? But don't tell the Foreign Secretary.
I don't think it's completely surprising that the Prime Minister would be so sensitive about the way in which he was dealing with a member of his senior team, and particularly a Director of Communications who's in minute-by-minute contact with the media, that he would want that kept to a very, very tight group of people at the time.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With permission, I'd like to provide the House with information that I now have about the appointment of Peter Mandelson as our ambassador to the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, before I go into the details, I want to be very clear with this House that while this statement will focus on the process surrounding Peter Mandelson's vetting and appointment, at the heart of this, there is also a judgment I made that was wrong.
The name had been submitted to the King as Minister's recommendation. The Prime Minister had made an announcement that Mandelson was his nominee without caveats. the British government had sought agrément, the formal diplomatic process for a host government accepting a nominee from the US government, and that had been obtained before I arrived in post. The position taken from the Cabinet Office was that there was no need to vet Mandelson.
Mr. Speaker, I know many members across the House will find these facts to be incredible. To that, I can only say they are right. It beggars belief that throughout the whole timeline of events, officials in the Foreign Office saw fit to withhold this information from the most senior ministers in our system in government.
This was not due process. Everyone knows the price of misleading the House. Will the Prime Minister finally take responsibility and go?
Mr. Speaker, let's be absolutely clear. Before Mandelson took up his post, UKSV recommended with red flags that clearance should be denied, and there was high concern that that was not brought to my attention or the attention of the Foreign Secretary at the time or subsequently is a very serious error of judgment. She rushed to judgment as she always did, just like the Iran war. Mr. Speaker, I was elected by the British people because they let the country down for 14 long years. Whatever she says, whatever noise they make, nothing is going to distract me from delivering for our country.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, happy Thursday, one and all. Mark Dolan in for the brilliant Jeremy Kyle for one day only. Then tomorrow, 1 till 4 p.m. in for Ian Collins, and then I'm restored to my glory on Saturday and Sunday breakfast. So it's all happening. And breaking this morning, taxpayers hand Emmanuel Macron another £660 million to tackle the migrant crossings in the Channel. But can France be trusted to help us stop the boats? Also, Cabinet loyalists turn against Sir Keir Starmer over the Mandelson scandal. How long has the PM got? And if we're looking at the alternatives to the incumbent, my question to you is a simple one this morning. Is Angela Rayner the answer for Britain? My phone number is 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Leave us a voice note, and as the saying goes, let's talk. Now, I'm delighted to say that you can hear the show on DAB+, in-app and online. The very DNA of the Talk brand is in radio, but you can also watch the show. Just head to YouTube, search Talk, and up we pop, and you will see my amazing guests, including Talk's international editor, Isabel Oakeshott, who joins me now. Hello, Isabel.
Good morning.
So, another £660 million to the French to stop the boats. Is this good money after bad?
Yeah, I mean, I'm genuinely jaw-dropping reaction-wise at this. You know, so far from giving them any extra millions, in my view, we should be suing them for the return of the money that we've already wasted on their so-called services and support and assistance. You know, we've been on those beaches for Talk. We've watched the gendarmes and how little they do. There is a claim that's been doing the rounds recently that the gendarmes and other French authorities stop about a third of the boat departures. I simply don't believe this, and would like to interrogate it a bit further. You know, I've seen them in action, or should we call it inaction. And so far from stopping boats, what they actually do is facilitate departures, actively facilitate the movement of migrants, of illegal immigrants, asylum seekers from the camps of Dunkirk all the way to departure points, to notorious departure points. We're not just talking shepherding them, down a few paths between the dunes here. We're talking escorting them actively onto coaches that are paid for by the French taxpayer. So subsidized travel that is actually effectively free. They don't really bother asking the asylum seekers, who, by the way, are clutching their life jackets in case anyone was in any doubt as to where these people are going. The gendarmes escort them onto buses and accompany them every step of the way on those journeys to notorious dinghy launch points. What the hell are we doing giving them a single dime for this work?
Well, listen, you've been massive on this story for a long time now, Isabel, and you had the exclusive in the Telegraph this week. The migrants heading from Belgium to Britain with a helping hand from the French. What's the story here?
Well, the story is yet another one of French duplicity. On the one hand, accepting our hundreds of millions of pounds of taxpayer money on the basis that they are going to help us tackle this shared problem. And on the other hand, not only standing by or actively facilitating departures from their own beaches, they are accepting boatloads of migrants arriving on dinghies from Belgium. Because of the geography, they depart from Belgian beaches and then they are escorted into French waters. Now, the French at this point have the option to say, hang on a minute, we're not taking any of your migrants. The reality is those migrants probably started their journey in France anyway, but the French could be pushing those boats back into Belgium. But no, they're not doing that. What are they doing? They are escorting the boats into French waters and then pushing them our way.
It's absolutely criminal, and it's a joke that we're handing more money to the French. We spoke earlier to Zia Youssef, who is Reform UK's would-be Home Secretary in a Reform government. And I put it to him that, come what may, he will need to deal with the French if he wants to stop the boats. Yes, we can exit the ECHR, tear up the Refugee Convention, look again at the Human Rights Act, but Paris will be involved.
Well, I think we've got to get aggressive with the French. Let's stop handing them our money and start handing them some realities, which is that the British people have had an absolutely more than enough of this ongoing farce. And it's much worse than just a farce, isn't it? It is a massive threat to national security. Yes. The people that are coming over, some of them may be good people, some of them are good people. I'm afraid that we don't know. That's the reality. They are undocumented, primarily young males. And what we do know is that in far too many incidents, they are linked to violent crime or other underworld activity in our country. So I think it's time that we said to the French, you know what, so far from giving you more money, we want our money back. And furthermore, we are ready to declare trade war with you until this is resolved. You are not pushing migrants our way. They come a long journey to get all the way through the safe country of France, to get to the northern coastline. And we're no longer prepared to be the mugs in this game. We've seen Donald Trump use these tactics very effectively. We are no longer in the European Union. That gives us the ability to actually implement such measures, to actually use trading relations to our advantage. It's time to put some serious pressure, economic, diplomatic, political, on the French and stop looking fools as we do right now.
And as was the case in the Brexit negotiations, we had a trade deficit with the EU. We still do. So we would, by definition, win a trade war. It's the ultimate leverage we have.
It's so obvious. What's the problem here? I'm not afraid
political will.
French.
Political will.
What exactly are we getting out of this relationship at the moment? Anyone who's had the misfortune to travel into the EU lately will see what a nightmare we now face at French border checkpoints. Yeah. We don't do that to them. It is all so petty. So let's hit them where it hurts. Let's stop making it so easy for them to export their wine, their cheese, their other big exports into the UK. This is just realpolitik. Why aren't we using the levers at our disposal? I believe that a reform government, if there were to be one, would be very willing to consider those Trumpian style measures. It's not a conversation I've had with Zia Yusuf, but I imagine if you asked him, he'd be well up for it. Zia Yusuf, if he is, he becomes Home Secretary, and we all know that's a big if, but if he does, I think nothing will be off the table. Nothing will be off limits. You know, some party, whoever it may be, and it sure as hell ain't going to be the Greens, has got to bring an end to this scandal.
And exclusive footage revealed on Talk has shown the conditions that illegal immigrants are accommodated in Belgium, in stark contrast to how we house these migrants, Isabel. Migrants claiming asylum in Belgium have revealed their basic accommodation and catering in stark contrast to the life of luxury enjoyed by those put up in hotels in Britain.
Again, this begs so many questions, doesn't it? We were welcomed into that asylum seeker facility in Belgium. It's located, ironically, just opposite the most beautiful war cemetery, which we went to explore. 1,600 British souls buried there, young men who gave their lives to protect our borders in 2 world wars, to protect our freedoms. And yet, pretty much opposite, there is this asylum seeker facility, and anyone who's watching now on YouTube or on the other platforms can see the contrast between the plush 4-star luxury accommodation that asylum seekers get when they come to the UK and the frankly jail-like accommodation that they get in Belgium. After all, a civilized country, the heart of the EU, no human rights abuses there. But they are given the very basics, 8 to a room, very, very little privacy. They've got the sort of drawback curtains you get on wards in NHS hospitals, toilet facilities, you know, something like 7 or 8 toilets for 50 blokes. You can imagine what that's like. It is basic in the extreme. You know, having looked at prison accommodation in the UK, a lot of it is a lot nicer, actually, than what you're getting if you're an asylum seeker in Belgium. No wonder that when some of them fail their asylum applications there, they decide that the next stop will be the UK.
And Isabel, it takes a lot to trigger me. I'm like you, I'm a calm and rational person, but I've got to admit to have been highly irritated by an ex-post from the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, this morning in regard to St George's Day. Now, St George's Day is a day of national celebration of England. England's an incredible country. It's a small pocket of land on a small island that changed the world. I love England so much. I believe it's the greatest nation in the history of the world. Just my opinion, but there you go. I'll leave it there. And you would expect, wouldn't you, Isabel, the Prime Minister to have a post on X saying, wishing everyone in England a happy St George's Day. That's all you have to do, isn't it? It's not complicated. It's not difficult. There you go. I just wrote the post. Instead, what do we get from the PM? Are you ready for this? St George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. Those are the values I will fight for always. He goes on to say, some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism. This is from Starmer an hour ago. That is an incredibly divisive and highly politicised tweet.
Oh my God, I can't believe he's done that.
Get a grip.
I can't believe he's done that. What the heck? You know, look, just say happy St George's Day, everyone, and my St George's flag is flying proudly from number 10 and every other government building that we can hoist it on today. There was no need for that. That was asinine. That was precisely what they accused. They on the left accused the right of being. That was, mind my language, bleep it out if you need to, shit stirring. That's what that was.
Well, my apologies to our viewers and listeners for the language, but I think it's understandable, Isabel. It's so ironic, isn't it, that the progressive left talk about hate and the division. They're the ones stirring it. They're the one behind it. Because if you think about things like open borders or telling people to hate their country, that's what division is.
Why would you do that as Prime Minister? Why would you do that except to play to the lowest common denominator of your support, except to wind people up. There was no need for that. They continually go on with their moral high ground, sanctimonious harping about politics of division and we stand for unity and none of this hate. What? And then they just literally peddle it out there on a Thursday morning for no reason whatsoever. And it's made my day start quite grumpily, and I'm normally pretty happy.
Yes, I'm honestly so astonished about this. A very simple post wishing everyone in England a happy St George's Day, maybe with, you know, Starmer, a pint of Timothy Taylor landlord ale, something like that. It's not complicated. It's not actually that difficult to be Prime Minister, but my goodness, this man is making a meal of it. Isabel, it's clear that the Prime Minister is not in great shape politically. There isn't an obvious figure that the party can unite around to replace him. So where does this leave us, do you think, in the weeks ahead?
Can I just add to what you said there? You said it's not particularly difficult to say the right thing on St George's Day. You know what he's doing? He's making this really easy for his political opponents.
Yes.
Whatever other party it may be, it's not hard to do a better job of celebrating St George's Day, is it, than he has done today? So where are we with his leadership? Well, it's very clear that he has hemorrhaged any support that he had remaining over the course of this week. It's not an if, but a when. Various scenarios being discussed. Does he announce after the local elections that he's going to step down in the autumn, but allow a time for a full kind of beauty parade or horror show, whichever way you look at it, of leadership contenders? Or is there somehow an agreement around a particular successor? I think the second scenario is vanishingly unlikely. So many people that want this job, pretty much as always. And I think we'll have the full-blown leadership contest. And where will we end up? Well, I think with a new Prime Minister in the autumn, not sure who it'll be.
Isabel, brilliant to see you again. We'll catch up soon. My thanks to Isabel Oakeshott, Talk's international editor. Folks, if you're just joining us on Talk, we've just witnessed the most extraordinary post on the social media platform X from the Prime Minister on the occasion of St George's Day. Now, St George's Day is a day of celebration for the country of England. In my view, the greatest nation in the history of the world. A small pocket of land on a tiny island that changed the world, that gave the world parliamentary representative democracy, that gave the world the idea of a judicial system, free markets, William Shakespeare, the Beatles. Here's what we've had from the PM. St George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. Those are the values I will always fight for, he says. Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism. Such an angry post. So divisive, because that's the problem with the woke progressive left. They are the very thing that they accuse you of being, because it is Starmer that's not a patriot. It's Starmer that is the divisive one. It is he that is the plastic patriot. Paul's in Brighton. Hello, Paul.
Hi there, Mark. Yeah, totally agree with you.
I'm shocked about this. I'm struggling, Paul. Listen to this. Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism. What's he on about?
Well, this is what you get from Labour. It's in their DNA. Down in Brighton here, Mark, we have a Labour council. And when there was a flurry of...
Oh, now, I'll have to... Let me interrupt you. Only because, lovely Paul, we've got local elections, so we're not allowed, and I'll get in big trouble. So keep your point, national politics and broad, if you can. Sorry to interrupt you, Paul. So go on. You're saying there's a problem with this Labour government.
Yeah, just on your point about local elections, we don't actually have one coming up in Brighton and Hove. That's one that's been suspended for some reason.
Right.
I don't know how that's got through the loophole, but it has.
Not good.
So if I can I refer to our council leader further, or do you want me to stop?
Well, I think if you wouldn't mind keeping it on what you think about the Labour Party and its attitude towards patriotism, because I've just got to make sure, Paul, normally, of course, you could knock yourself out. It's just that we're under broadcast rules in the run-up to local elections, and we may as well keep ourselves on air. I understand you've got misgivings about the local authority, and that's no problem. But what are you what is this message from the Prime Minister about the flag is used for division and hate? What does that tell you?
That totally creates division and hate. Absolutely, 100%. But my personal feeling is about Starmer is he's not interested in being a Prime Minister. He's not capable of the job. All he's thinking of is a stepping stone for his future. He carries the candle for Tony Blair, and he sees what Blair's done, gone on to make himself a fortune and become a so-called respected statesman in the world, and that's where Starmer wants to go. He's not interested in this country. He doesn't like the people in this country. He's not interested in us. I could go on and on and on. The guy's just got no interest at all. And just on the point of Blair, can I just make another slight point, Mark, because you were talking earlier about the continuing Mandelson affair. No, I'm very surprised. I've not heard any of your broadcasters, and I do listen quite a lot, mention the possibility that Blair might be involved in all this Mandelson affair. It wouldn't surprise me if Blair has been poking his nose in, give Peter the job, give Peter this, give Peter that, because Mandelson was behind all the New Labour situation. It would not surprise me one iota. And just going back to this patriotism thing, Mark, our local council, which I won't say who is, but our local when there was a flurry of flags being put up, English flags, she wrote in the paper that the British flag causes fear and despair amongst certain members of our community. Now, if that's not another example of divisiveness by being spouted by politicians, I don't know what is.
These people are sick. Paul, what a brilliant call. Call me again soon. Lovely to speak to you this morning. Have a good Thursday. You're listening to Talk. If you're just joining us, we have a developing story. The Prime Minister has just posted an extraordinary message on the social media platform X on the occasion of St. George's Day. Let me read this out to you. The Prime Minister wrote the following: "The St. George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. Those are the values," he writes, "that I will always fight for." He goes on to say, "Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism." So, Nehar, back to me, because this is really important. You've got a Prime Minister whose job it is to represent the whole country. Today is a day of national celebration for the whole of England. It's not complicated. All you do is you go on X and you say, "May I wish all of the people of England a happy St. George's Day. What a wonderful celebration of a wonderful country." That's all you've got to do. It's not complicated. Instead, Starmer sends a very angry post talking about hate and plastic patriotism. You, Sir Keir Starmer, are the man responsible for division and hate and plastic patriotism, because St. George's Day is a day of celebration for this country, and we are nothing without the flag, and we don't have a country if we're not united around English and British values. That is what unity and community looks like, and you don't know the meaning of the word. Shame on you.
handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:27 Talk Breakfast. We've got a developing story here. The Prime Minister has sent the following post on the social media platform X. On St George's Day, he wrote, "St George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. Those are the values I will always fight for. Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism." It's an extraordinary post. The Prime Minister's job was very simple: to wish everyone a happy St George's Day. England's great. The end. It's the same when you celebrate Wales and when you celebrate Scotland. That's the simple job to do. He hasn't done that. He's politicised it. What an angry man. What a strange, strange post. Your reaction, please. 0344 499 1000. Such a busy show today. And a man that's been campaigning to get fuel prices down for many a year is Mike Ridley, feature writer at the Sun newspaper. He joins us now. Hello, Mike.
Hi, morning, Mark, and happy St George's Day to you.
Well, thank you. I mean, I shouldn't...
all your viewers and listeners.
I shouldn't wish to drag you into the grubby business of party politics, but I was just surprised there, Mike, while I've got you, at the tone of the Prime Minister's post. It's not complicated for the PM. Just wish everyone a happy St George's Day, the end. I don't think we need all this politics, do we?
No, not at all. Not at all. Especially as, you know, we're coming up to the elections next couple of weeks. So why divide the country like that? It's mad.
I think it's crazy. Now, listen, let's talk about your very, very noble cause, which you've been working on for many years now, which is about fuel prices, because I think maybe not everyone realises that the percentage of the cost of petrol and diesel that is tax is eye-watering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's well over 50% of what you pay at the pump. So I paid last weekend, I paid 83 quid just to top up my trusty old Nissan.
Yeah.
And more than £40 of that went straight to the Treasury. I mean, it's absolutely diabolical that hard-working families and businesses are having to pay these prices, which is driving up inflation. And why doesn't the Chancellor understand that?
It's an insidious stealth tax. And the other problem is, if you go after motorists, then you're going to have an economic impact, aren't you? Because a lot of people in cars are contributing to the economy in their use of a vehicle.
Yeah, and the other thing is that we have, since 2011, with our colleagues at Fair Fuel UK, have fought to keep down duty. And in that time, we've saved the motorists something like £120 billion. And each time there's a new treasurer, Howard Cox, who's a friend of your show, and myself,
sure,
try and tell the Chancellor, hang on, if you keep putting up tax on fuel, you're going to drive up inflation. And we saw that yesterday in the new inflation figures.
Most definitely. And yes, of course, there is an issue around supply, and global energy prices have increased since the war in Iran. But we've had this problem long before the war in Iran was a twinkle in Donald Trump's eye.
Yes, because we are one of the most highly taxed countries for motoring. And Labour just continue to drive the motorist down and down and down. I mean, if you wanted to spend all that money, spend it on the roads, but they don't do that. They spend it on welfare benefits. They spend it on things that ordinary families just don't want to pay, and our readers aren't happy about it at all.
No, it's deeply unfair. It's not just those who are driving a van or their work involves getting to and from their destination in a vehicle. It's also busy mums taking the kids to school, carers visiting relatives or others that they're looking after. Our wider society relies on four wheels. It's just not going to cut it to tell people to get on a bus or to ride a bicycle.
No, absolutely. I mean, I was up in Northumberland and at the weekend, and everybody up there relies on their car. It's not like down here in London or in big metropolitan cities. It's an important part of their lives, and without a car, a lot of people are stuffed.
Most definitely. Mike, does the government have a defence to be made here that they've inherited a broken economy from the Conservatives, that they haven't bankrupted the country overnight, that there were significant systemic problems in the country financially when they came to power a year and a half ago?
Well, you could argue that, but also you could say, well, hang on a minute, this is where we are, and you've already started taxing people from the minute you came in. I mean, I've covered budgets since 1988, I think. So
wow.
I've seen a lot of terrible chancellors. I've seen some good ones, and I think the problem with Rachel Reeves is she just doesn't get it. She just doesn't understand that people are really, really suffering now.
And it's a tragedy for this Labour government, isn't it, Mike? Because Labour governments always exist to invest in public services, to tackle inequality. It's ironic that their policies are impacting the growth that they, as a progressive political movement, so desperately need.
Yeah, and if they cut fuel duty now, and even if it's a temporary emergency measure like Spain, socialist country, Ireland, where there've been protests, if they did that now, they would really start to help people. And I think we need to do that. We need to do that now. There's something like, in the paper today, I've listed 40 odd countries that are already helping out their motorists, from Canada to Madagascar, and yet here we are, the Chancellor's dithering and saying, oh well, should we cut duty or shouldn't we cut duty? Well, we're saying cut it now, because it's going to be too late. If this war does drag on, people are not going to be able to afford to put petrol in their vehicles and diesel in their vans. And there's a protest on Monday coming to Westminster, which will be very interesting on Monday morning, to see how that works out. And I think there's going to be a big protest outside the Treasury.
Do you know who's organising that, Matt? Mike, sorry.
Well,
Mike.
It's called the National Fuel Tax Protest. I mean, Reform will be there. Robert Jenrick, who will be there. I don't think Nigel Farage will be there. But I think it's more than just Reform. I think it's going to be quite a wide spectrum of people who are going to turn up.
Well, and Mike, you are
government know what's happening.
A seasoned journalist and feature writer at The Sun, and you've got the back of your readers, which is why The Sun is so popular and why your journalism is so important. And you're so right to focus on the importance of the motor car for our economy and our society. It's a crime how expensive it's got. It doesn't need to be this way. Really appreciate that. And here's a thought for you. You started as a reporter in, you were focusing on the economy in 1988. Is that right? Is that when you started?
Right. But I tell you what, in 1969, my parents bought a filling station. At age 12, I was selling petrol.
So it's in your blood. It's in your DNA.
Literally, I've got petrol in my veins.
Well, I've just got to quote this to you, because petrol was dirt cheap in 1988, and the rate of economic growth. Do you want to know how high GDP was in 88?
Go on, tell me.
5.4%.
Wow, and we're lucky to get 0.5%, I bet now.
Pretty crazy. Mike, we've got to speak again. Really appreciate having a legend like you on the show. Mike Ridley, feature writer at The Sun, campaigning for many years to get the prices down at the pumps. It's the economy, it's our society, it's carers, it's busy families.
To tax them to the hilt and to charge that much is daylight robbery. Well, the Prime Minister has sparked controversy this morning with a very angry tweet about St George's Day. Here it goes. St George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. Those are the values I will always fight for. He goes on to write, some people try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism. It's an extraordinarily angry post when all he had to do is wish everyone a happy St George's Day. Lee is in Doncaster. Lee, I'm shocked by this. What's your reaction?
I'm shocked too, Mark. Thank you for letting me on again. Please don't let me have a rant like I did yesterday.
Of course you can.
I think... well, I'd prefer not to. As it's St George's Day, happy St George's Day,
You
everyone.
too.
I, like many other Englishmen, I'm proud to be English. I'm also proud to be British. I like both of those flags. And I know that you're hosting a talk show, Mark, and talk is all about talk and interaction. But could you see if you can find the Standard of St George, which is a military march written by Kenneth J. Alford, who was a military musician. He also wrote Colonel Bogey. I'm sure you know what Colonel Bogey is. See if you can find that. It's a fantastic, stirring march. And England is about... we do have a past glory. And let's not forget that, because Mr. Starmer wants to dumb us all down to being absolutely nothing so that he can just control us and that we don't think for ourselves and we don't think, well, yes, perhaps there is something more than just what's being offered to me now by these people.
Well said. Lee, I wish we had longer. You are so right. Got a lovely message from Julian Hitchin. Good morning, friends. My mum is Scottish. My dad was Irish. I'm born in England, so I feel British through and through. And yes, I will be flying my flag today. Happy St George's Day, one and all. Much more to come. This is Talk Breakfast.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
9:39 Talk Breakfast. Very strange post on X from the Prime Minister. An angry rant about hatred and division on St George's Day. Rob says, good morning, Mark. Robin Burnley here. Starmer is well on the way to international infamy now. The songs sung about him will be a viral sensation during the World Cup. Yeah, they won't be very broadcastable, would they? Georgina in Cambridge, happy St George's Day, Mark. That post from the Prime Minister is shockingly awful, but hopefully he's just removed a few more shovels of soil from his premiership grave. And how about this from Neil, who says, great show, Mark. You only need to look at the first 100 replies on X to Starmer's St George's Day statement to confirm that he's probably the most hated man in the UK. Adrian, Mark, what a dreadful St George's Day message from our Prime Minister. A plastic message from a plastic Prime Minister. Jenny says, hi Mark, happy St George's Day. Ever since Starmer came to power, this Labour government's policy has benefited one country, China. Look at Chagos, look at energy policies, the super embassy, collapsed spy cases, the list goes on. A very strange post. The Prime Minister writes, the St George's flag stands for unity over hatred and decency over division. These are the values that I will always fight for. Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. I reject their plastic patriotism. Let me tell you, Prime Minister, you can't hijack a flag. You can't weaponise a flag. A flag is the flag of the country. Doesn't matter what you do with it. Brian's in London. Hello, Brian.
It's really good to celebrate St George's. I've got St George's flags all over my car. I've always had that. Do you realise we're the only country in the world that ain't got its own national anthem?
It's a very good point. We have unofficial national anthems for England, don't we?
Well, we have.
Jerusalem?
Yeah, I would go for any of them, basically. But when the only thing that does, when you go to cricket, England playing cricket, they play Jerusalem when they walk out. But when you go to a football match, you play God Save the King. Well, OK, God Save the King is very good, but
it's British.
National anthem for England.
I totally agree. And that's the point. God Save the King is for the United Kingdom. And it's very important, isn't it, to have patriotism. The Welsh have it. The Scots have it, Brian. It's time the English did.
Yeah, I've always said that, basically. I've been in the army, I've done things in my life, and basically I've always been patriotic. But when they start playing God Save the King in England football, it turns me off. All the players don't know the words. They stand there like idiots.
I know.
None of them can sing it because they don't know what it's all about. If you had a real thing you could sing like Jerusalem or pick anything really, and have that, then I would agree with it. But otherwise than that, St George's Day just passes us by, doesn't it?
Well, I find it strange because England is arguably the greatest nation in the history of the world, Brian, because it is England that was the country responsible for exporting the rule of law, free markets, representative democracy. We gave the world William Shakespeare and the Beatles. England was the epicenter of the war effort during 2 world wars. England is extraordinary. It should be celebrated.
Well, we gave up massive things. My dad in the war went away when I was 3, and the next time I saw my dad, I was 8 and a half.
See, I mean, that's extraordinary, isn't it? And it breaks your heart what's happened. Brian, briefly, what do you make of the tone of the Prime Minister's post on X? He said that the flag stands for unity over hatred, decency over division. Some try to hijack our flag to spread hate. What do you make of the tone of that?
Well, that's typical of him, isn't it, basically? He can't be patriotic because he's not patriotic. And basically, he's got to dig in and say something sarcastic or do down the flag. So he's done it in a roundabout way. The flag's all right, but it ain't all right because it's disgusting. And that's what he thinks about it.
Well, listen, thank you, Brian. I hope you have a lovely St George's Day. Let's take a voice note on this.
Steve from Manchester. Nice to hear you on the breakfast show. Great show, by the way. I would say that the only person or people in this country causing division and hatred are Keir Starmer and his socialist left-wing Labour Party. They are the only ones who are creating all this hatred by doing the things that they're doing. If they just left us British alone to be British and stop trying to make us be something other than what we are, then there wouldn't be any hatred, would there? Simple as that. Anyway, mate, great show.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, I think that the sort of project, the mission of the establishment elite is that we are now sort of globalists, that we're internationalists. It's like, no, we have Wales, we have Northern Ireland, we have Scotland, and we have England. And we have a multi-ethnic society, many cultures and religions, but we should be united around Welshness, around Scottishness, around Englishness, around Britishness. Listen, I'm delighted to welcome the Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South, a very good friend of the show, Graham Stringer. Graham, I'm sorry we had trouble getting a line to you. You've joined us on the phone. Top of the morning and happy St George's Day, sir.
Happy St George's Day to you too.
It's a happy occasion, and I think we can celebrate that. Are you surprised by the tone of the Prime Minister's post on X, talking about some trying to hijack the flag? I mean, we don't need that, do we? We just need good wishes on a happy day from the PM.
Yeah, it's a narrative that I don't like. Basically, flags of our country should unite people. If people are living here, then that's our flag. It's not a divisive issue unless people choose it to make it a divisive issue.
I know, and I'm just surprised from the PM after a torrid week. And all you needed was just, you know, good warm wishes on this happy day, maybe a photograph of the Prime Minister with a pint of English ale. That's all it took, isn't it? And yet he's ranting and raving about plastic patriotism and hatred. I mean, it just strikes me as very tone deaf, really.
I think he's under a great deal of stress, and he's making misjudgment after misjudgment at the moment, and that's one, as you say. Picture of him tucking into roast beef today with a pound of bitter would be all that was necessary.
Most definitely. Do you feel sorry for him at the moment, Graham, after the week he's had? Do you have any sympathy for the boss?
I always try to have sympathy for people who are in a mess, and he is in a mess. It is mainly of his own making, because he's said he's been delegating decision making, but he's actually abdicated responsibility of leadership. So there's a lot of criticism of him, but I tend to feel sorry for anybody who's in a mess. I don't think he's a fundamentally bad person. He just can't do the job of Prime Minister, even though he's intelligent and he's been successful in his other career. He's not made a good job of being Prime Minister.
Graham, I know you would dearly love to have a very successful Labour administration. I know you've got doubts about the current leadership and the direction of travel. Is there a figure in the party who could step in, replace the Prime Minister and get this project back on track?
I hope so. One of my colleagues has said that Keir Starmer should resign. I understand why he's said that. He's not been an effective Prime Minister. But I think what we need is a period where the party, the parliamentary party, the whole of the Labour Party can reflect on what's gone wrong and find an answer to your question. It's not obvious to me who the answer is at the moment, but I believe when there are 400 Labour MPs, there should be somebody with leadership skills who've got an analysis of what's gone wrong and can work out a programme and policies to make things better. It's not obvious to me that some of the names that are put forward regularly are the people to take us forward. In many ways, if they're members of the cabinet, they have been associated with some of the mistakes and failures over the last 2 years. So I think we do need that major debate to find somebody. It's not like when Tony Blair said he was going. Gordon Brown was the obvious successor. There is no such person at the moment, and it will give the Labour Party an opportunity to decide whether it wants to vote for a new leader with its head or with its heart. If it votes with its heart and doesn't confront the issues about defence and welfare and immigration and many of the other difficulties we're facing. I mean, I didn't mention it. I should have done the economy. I mean, getting those things right and what we need to do, which will not be easy for anybody. Anybody coming in and tackling those problems is going to find great difficulties. But at least if there was a clearly expressed direction of travel that people could criticise, understand, and it wouldn't change. There wouldn't be U-turns because mistakes were made every day of the week, then the country would understand that. We have an intelligent population, and they respond to prime ministers who make difficult decisions in the interests of the country.
Most definitely. Graham, always a deep privilege to have you on the show. Thank you so much for your valuable time. Graham Stringer MP, Labour MP for Blackley and Middleton South. He'd be a half-decent Prime Minister, wouldn't he? Would you take Graham Stringer in number 10 for the next 2.5, 3 years? I should, Coco. This is Talk Breakfast.
The handover briefing I was getting as I arrived at post was what I felt was a generally dismissive attitude to his vetting clearance. The focus was on getting Mandelson out to Washington quickly. Despite this atmosphere, an atmosphere of pressure, the department completed developed vetting to the normal high standard. Because the vetting process is not there to determine fitness for office or reputational risk, it's there to protect national security.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
You are listening to Talk Breakfast. Mark Dolan with you until 10 a.m. The excellent Alex Phillips is up next, in for the marvellous Julia Hartley-Brewer. I'm back at 1 o'clock tomorrow covering for Ian Collins, 1 till 4. Do join me then, and then Weekend Breakfast Saturday and Sunday. Next week, we're back to normal. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, breakfast. Great news, folks. Your favourite TV show from the 90s is back. Chris Evans and TFI Friday have returned to their original home of Channel 4 for the next 5 Friday nights from 11, reimagined for 2026 by Virgin Radio UK. TFI Unplugged features A-list interviews, music and classic bits from the TFI archives 30 years on. That's TFI Unplugged this Friday at 11 p.m. on Channel 4. This week's guests, Chris Marshall, Emma Laird, and from the archives, Sir Paul McCartney, no less. Well, go from one legend to another, because down the line, I'm delighted to welcome Conservative MP and Shadow Defence Minister Mark Francois. Hello, Mark. Lovely to see you again. It's been too long.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's good of you to have me on.
Really shocked, Mark, at this headline on the front page of the Daily Telegraph. Lord Hermer pursued witch hunt against troops despite warnings. This is the government's top lawyer who seems to have been participating in the lawfare against our military veterans despite warnings.
Yes, some years ago he was hired by a man called Phil Shiner, who was subsequently convicted of fraud and struck off as a solicitor for effectively completely fabricating false cases against British troops who had fought in Iraq. And Lord Hermer, or Richard Hermer as he then was, willingly worked for him, as indeed did one Keir Starmer QC. I'll come back to that. Mark, I know the nature of the beast is we're always limited for time. I need to make an important announcement with your permission.
Go for it.
Within the hour, the government will have what we call business questions in the House of Commons when they announce the forthcoming business for next week. They will announce that on Monday evening, there will be a crunch vote which will affect the fate of our Northern Ireland veterans. And your viewers need to know this. The context is the Northern Ireland Troubles Bill, which is Labour's benighted bit of legislation that would open all our brave veterans up to renewed lawfare, just like what happened in Iraq potentially, would run out of parliamentary time next week unless the government passed what is known as a carryover motion to carry it over into the King's speech and pick it up where they left off in the new session. If they win that vote, then the bill is carried over. If they lose that vote, the bill dies and our veterans are still protected under the Legacy Act that we, the Conservatives, brought in 2023. So this is a really important vote on Monday night. We hope the Liberals and the other parties will be with us, but there are still too many Labour MPs. So we are hoping that many Labour MPs will look into their hearts and conclude that at the end of the day, they would rather vote to defend our brave Northern Ireland veterans than vote for the carryover motion and do Sinn Féin a favour. So the reason I wanted to, I'm sorry to cut across.
No, it's very important. I mean, we have to pray. We have to pray that there are plenty of Labour rebels who will stand up for our veterans.
That's what we've got to hope. And remember, particularly in the 1970s and the 1980s, when, you know, the Troubles were at its most kinetic. I mean, there was a point in 1972 where there were 5 or 6 bombs going off in Belfast every single day. Over 700 British troops were killed in the Troubles. Thousands were maimed by both Republican and so-called loyalist bombs. The army went there to hold the line between two warring communities and took heavy casualties in doing it. We owe them an immense debt. So we've got to hope that, and I'm basically announcing this on Talk TV, because it'll be official within the hour, but you heard it here first. We've got to hope that Labour MPs will look into their souls, because many of those regiments will have been recruited from what you might call gritty red wall seats, as we now would, from the Berries and the Boltons and the Blackburns and the Burnleys. We've got to hope those MPs will face down their whips and vote for British Army veterans rather than for Sinn Féin. That's their challenge.
It's the most important mission, and I back it all the way. We're having a recruitment crisis in the military. SAS soldiers quitting en masse because of the fear of lawfare in their retirement. It's a shocking crime. It's a betrayal of our brave heroes who have served in the military. More power to you.
It is a betrayal. Thank you. And so there are 2 levels to this. One is what you might call the moral case. It's wrong that there is 2-tier justice. Our veterans can be pursued while so many alleged IRA terrorists were let out with Tony Blair with so-called letters of comfort. And that the operational case is, if they carry on like this, what sane person would join the British Army?
Most definitely. Mark, briefly, it's St George's